I do have issue with your comments about it was a Remain Parliament that repeatedly tried to block Brexit. I know that's how it felt to people who voted for Brexit, but I would remind you that Boris Johnson's withdrawal agreement bill passed Parliament. It passed its second reading. And what Parliament asked for was to not rush it through. They just wanted to properly scrutinise it, as any piece of legislation that will affect the country so much should be scrutinised. And that is when, and there's a very, very interesting article in The Guardian this morning about how actually, and we'll speaking to a Liberal Democrat later on, Christine Jardine, actually the Liberal Democrats were the ones that handed Boris Johnson an election. People like Tony Blair, John Major, former Liberal Democrat leader Vince Cable, Tim Farron, Philip Lee, they all said, don't do it. Keep Boris Johnson there. His bill has been passed, right? Scrutinise the bill. And everybody said, do not go into an election without Brexit sorted out. So I don't disagree with you that Parliament was getting in the way, but let's not forget that Boris Johnson did get what he asked for. He did get through his withdrawal agreement bill. Parliament wasn't blocking that. Sian's called from Portsmouth, says Portsmouth South. Welcome back to the show, Sian. What would you like to say?
Hello, Alexis. How are you?
I'm very well, mate. How are you?
I'm not too bad. I think I'm kind of recovered from election night now, so I can have a chat about what's happened. So
Go on.
Basically, you were just talking about why the Conservatives won this election.
Yes.
I think I agree with you on the Brexit front. I think that his short and simple message about getting Brexit done basically cut through, especially to the old Labour votes to the north. I tried to explain this to several Labour activists where I live, but they weren't listening, so I kind of gave up the ghost in the end. And then the second reason was Jeremy Corbyn and his business plans. I spoke to quite a lot of people in the Hampshire area, which basically voted Conservative overwhelmingly. Absolutely. And the fact that he wanted to raise corporation tax and raise wages at the same time put the fear of God in business. And to me, that's where he lost the election.
Iain, I'll defer to you on that one, seeing as business is your thing. Do you think a lot of businesses were spooked by Jeremy Corbyn?
Spooked, terrified
really?
by Jeremy Corbyn.
Even though you had the city about 3 or 4 months ago, you had big companies in the city saying we'd prefer a Jeremy Corbyn government to a no-deal Brexit, for example.
Who were they?
I'll find it.
Yeah, go on. You find them while I'm talking.
Find it.
I'd love to know, because look, when people saw the Corbyn manifesto and the detail of the Corbyn manifesto, I mean, the one thing I will give Labour, is they weren't hiding anything. You know, it's not as if they were sort of saying, we're going to do all this, nice stuff to business, and then, suddenly they get into power and do something nasty. No, I mean, business could hear what Labour's plans were loud and clear. Corporation tax going up quite significantly again. The whole idea of completely reframing how a lot of our companies actually work. And whether or not you were a large business or a small business, the past 3 or 4 years there's been a big debate as to whether or not large or small businesses were in the same place on this issue. Whether you were a large or a small business, you just didn't like it. And Labour seems to be, I mean, I wrote a book about some of this, as you know, earlier in the year. And when I talked to Labour politicians, one of the things I kept asking them was, why do you never talk about firing up enterprise? Why do you never talk about the wealth creators? Why do you never talk about the people that can pay the taxes and deliver the income to have these great public services? And from people beyond the front bench, I'd have Labour politicians agreeing with me. When you got to Corbyn and McDonnell, they could never utter the words.
Yeah.
Did you find the businesses?
Yeah, I did.
Did you?
I did. It's Citibank, Deutsche Bank. So the article was in the London Economic, and it was in the Telegraph as well. Jeremy Corbyn better than no-deal Brexit, say investment bankers. So from Citigroup, they are warming to Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, so the investment bankers are really popular with the voters, Alexis.
Of course. We always want to do what the investment bankers say. Sean, do you know of any people that were Labour voters that lent their votes to Boris Johnson in this election?
Not where I live. I mean, Stephen Morgan's trebled his majority here, so I've not met a single person who was a Labour voter who's voted Conservative, but I have heard several people phoning the radio. I mean, I heard a guy on another station the other day on another show who was pretty much in tears because he's had to vote Conservative because he couldn't stand Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party. And no matter how many times you'd say this to a Labour activist, they don't listen. It's become this kind of strange cult. I mean, I grew up on a council estate in Portsmouth. I should be going out and voting Labour, and I'm not because I just cannot stand the thought of Corbyn and McDonnell with their hands on power. It's just not going to happen. And I couldn't even bring myself to vote for Boris and the Conservative Party because I know in my heart of hearts what he's offering on Brexit isn't really Brexit, and I wasn't prepared to cost the country 30 billion quid. So I ended up voting none of the above because what else was I supposed to do?
So did you spoil your ballot or vote for somebody completely different?
No, I spoiled my ballot. I voted none because I just didn't feel any of the parties were credible. And I even spoke to people on social media just after they voted, and they didn't even realise they could do this. They've ended up going and voted for someone, even though they didn't really want to vote for them. So I think in the future, people need to be aware that they don't have to actually vote for somebody. If you want to vote none of the above, you can. You don't have to be hoodwinked into voting Labour or Conservative all the time.
But I'm curious to understand from what you're saying. I take it that you're a supporter of Brexit. Did you not have the option of voting for the Brexit Party?
I was a subscriber earlier this year to the Brexit Party. However, when Nigel Farage came out publicly and said he wasn't going to stand for a seat, it was like a bit of a slap in the face, basically. It was kind of like reality hitting me. I kind of realised then in an instant that he wasn't for the people. He was only for Nigel Farage. That's how I saw it. And I was like, if you can't even be bothered to stand for a seat as leader, I can't be bothered to vote for your party. And as you watched the polls, as he was dripping away and losing votes to the Conservatives, it was clear, you know, people wanted this Boris deal. I've even got friends who are Brexit Party supporters and voters who rolled over and voted Conservative. And I've sat there till I'm blue in the face saying to people, this isn't Brexit. What you're voting for is just a withdrawal agreement.
Okay, but then
to spend another 12 months.
So what would Brexit be for you, briefly, because I want to go to our next caller, but what would Brexit be for you?
Well, for me, it'd be leaving the European Union, all the institutions, the customs union, the single market, the whole shaboodle.
Which is what's going to happen on the 31st of January.
Well, you get the transition period, don't you? Because they're going to negotiate the free trade arrangement.
Yeah.
That's what I understand it as. But then there's the cost of it, which is 30 billion quid, and then you don't get the seat at the table. I just don't see. But then you're left. This 30 billion quid is money that we already owe. This is money that we had already agreed to certain projects to pay when we were members. So I don't understand. You're so close to what you want to have, which is Brexit. We won't be part of the ECJ. We won't be part of the customs union, single market. I don't understand quite where your problem is with a Conservative deal. Okay, for example, the 30 billion quid, you're quite welcome to find me on Twitter, Alexis. We've spoken before. If you want to send me a link with an itemised bill for the 30 billion, I'm happy to read it. Because I've still not seen it. I've been asking for one for 3 years, and not one single prominent person in the media or in politics has sent me an itemised bill. I've never seen one.
Well, we will find an itemised bill for Sean in Portsmouth and get it to him. It feels like you're so close to sort of the thing you've wanted for a long time, but you're getting stuck. I mean, put it this way, I'm sure there is some sort of bill somewhere, but put it this way, it's going to cost you 30 billion quid to just get what you want, and it's a one-off payment.
We were talking earlier about tactical voting in this election. Yeah. The most important tactical vote that took place in this election was Nigel Farage deciding to stand down those Brexit Party MPs in all those Tory constituencies. That's what helped Boris Johnson.
Yeah. How surprised were you when he announced that? Because I wasn't surprised one bit.
No, well, basically, the money ran out when Banks... Did you see Banks on the election night show on early Friday morning, just hugely congratulating Boris on his big victory? When Banks took Farage's money away. Job done.
Okay, let's hear from Tom. Tom's called from London. Tom, welcome to the show. What would you like to say?
Thanks for having me on, guys. Just the thing for me that I think kind of goes back to even to the Brexit debate was around being patriotic and Britain. They talk about obviously taking back sovereignty. I don't think it matters whether you're kind of social economic background anywhere in the country, whether you're upper class, middle class, working class. Everyone's proud to be British, and I think the issue with Corbyn was there was always that underlying. He'd always taken the side of the country's enemies.
I just don't buy it. I'll tell you why I don't buy it, and I'm happy to be corrected. What are you basing that on? Where do you base that he's taken the side of the UK's enemies instead of standing up for the UK? Where do you base that on?
So, I mean, I'm ex-military.
Yeah.
I spent 5 years with 2 tours of Afghanistan and Iraq. So I've worked with a lot of people within the military sphere. Mm-hmm. And if you look at, yes, I understand you have to speak to both sides of a conflict for peace. But it seemed like at no point did he stand up and say, you know what, our enemies are wrong and Britain is right. Whether that be in Kosovo, Bosnia, whether that be the Falklands War, mm-hmm. whether that be more recently with Russia and the Skripal assassination in the UK, he's always sat on the other side of the argument. He's never said, you know what, our enemies are wrong and Britain was right in this state. I can't think of a time he's done that.
But some people may say he's been taking and again, please don't read this as I'm trying to stand up for Jeremy Corbyn. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. But some people may say he's, for the Skripal poisoning, for example, he was being cautious as to where the blame lay before we had made the necessary investigations to be certain of it. When it came to the IRA, for example, yeah, he shared platforms because he wanted to sit down and actually talk, because carrying on with the struggles and carrying on with the bombings wasn't getting anybody anywhere. And let's not forget that the government at the time actually did sit down with the IRA and sort it out.
But Jeremy Corbyn spoke in favour of a united Ireland at those times. I mean, so it's not, he had a clear political intent to break up the UK. My first ever party conference, Alexis, was as a Tory, was in 1984 in Brighton. And I lost a couple of friends as a result of that. Mm-hmm. Where was Jeremy Corbyn then? He was on platforms supporting the IRA, and beyond that, politically supporting the IRA to create a united Ireland, which, he constantly talks about democracy. And at that time, there was not in any sense a majority for a united Ireland. It's deeds and actions we have to look at. And I think that's what the British public decided this week.
Tom, do you think, a lot of people are saying they blame Brexit. They think that this was a Brexit vote that did it for Labour. That's certainly what the Corbyn camp are coming out to say, and the sort of relentless hammering that Jeremy Corbyn received in the media. Is that what it felt like to you?
I think so. I think there was a multitude of factors. It seems like, obviously being in London, I'll go back to Brexit. My heart was to kind of leave, but I voted to remain for the economic reasons. But I fully understand and kind of empathise with people who did vote to leave. Mm-hmm. So I think that Brexit was a major factor, and it feels like it was just a number of things. If it was just Brexit, and it was maybe a different leader in charge of Labour, and it was a different manifesto, then maybe they would have been all right. But the fact it was multiple things all kind of came together at once and just completely decimated them.
Okay. Tom, thank you very much for your call. I appreciate it. Get in touch. Let us know your thoughts. Why do you think the Conservatives won this election? What was it? What won it? 0344 499 1000 is the number that you need. You can tweet us here at Talk Radio. You can watch us live streamed on our Twitter feed, our Facebook page and our YouTube page. I've got plenty of your comments coming in, which I will read. Let's read one before we go. Aaron on YouTube says, because Labour are the minority party now, not the working class party that they once were. Well, Aaron has a point there. You saw that red wall, that red Labour wall all across the Midlands and the North East and the North West actually crumble away. We're going to be speaking in the next hour to Ronnie Campbell, former Labour MP in Blythe Valley. That was one of the first results that came in. He stood down and he saw, he represented Blythe Valley since 1987. And he saw, after he stepped down, Blythe Valley turn blue for the first time in its history. The Conservative Party being voted in a Labour heartland. 0344 499 1000 is the number you need. You could tweet us at Talk Radio.
On DAB, digital radio, online and on mobile.
This is Talk Radio.
Today, it's Man United v Everton and Arsenal v Man City in a huge afternoon of football. And with Now TV, you can watch both games live for a one-off payment of just $9.99. Hold on, they're checking with VAR.
That's confirmed, it's $9.99.
Good call, game on. So, to only pay for the games that matter to you, grab a Now TV Sky Sports Day Pass. Search Now TV Sports. 18 plus, content streamed via internet, full terms apply.
Hey Claire.
I feel rubbish.
Here, have a Lemsip Max all-in-one. When cold and flu hits, don't just feel better, feel Lemsip better. Contains paracetamol. Always read the label for ages 16 and above.
The Honda Jazz, the car that feels fabulously small on the outside, yet deceptively big on the inside, with its incredible storage solutions and magic folding seats. Not to mention the suite of advanced safety features. And now with the small but big Jazz event, it's available with 0% APR representative and 5 years complimentary servicing until January 31st. Visit your local dealer to find out more. Honda dealers are credit brokers, not lenders. Finance provided by Honda Finance Europe, authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Terms and conditions apply.
Ah, Christmas. A time for sharing gifts and laughter. And photos and videos. Make the most of it with a SIM-only deal packed with data from Tesco Mobile. Like a 10-gig SIM for just £13 a month. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile today. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 29th of December. 12-month contract and unlocked 4G-enabled phone required. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Will you find a fiver, tenner, 20 or even a crisp £50 note in your copy of The Sun on Sunday? That's right, cash. Yes, real banknotes inside the paper. We're giving away a ho load of Christmas cash this weekend only in The Sun on Sunday. It pays to read The Sun. T's and C's apply.
Talk Radio, traffic and travel.
Starting off in Lancashire, the M61 northbound between Junction 8 for Chorley on towards 9 for Clayton Brook. There's a multi-vehicle accident there, so that road remains closed. In Wiltshire, the M4 westbound from Junction 17 for Chippenham on towards 18 for Bath. 2 miles of queues in the area there. That's because of an accident, and there's some investigation work as well. And in Surrey, the M23 from the M25 on towards Junction 9 for Gatwick Airport. There's a breakdown. I'm Ellen Collin.
We all knew that kid at school who was brilliant at everything, good-looking, clever, and able to handle everything effortlessly. Well, now we can all experience just what that feels like with the award-winning new Seat Tarraco. With features including eye-catching metallic paint, clever tech, and room for 7 people, it's top of its class. And until December 31st, we're offering 4 years 0% APR, so you can have it all too. Just visit seat.co.uk.
With Solutions Personal Contract Plan, maximum 48-month contract, minimum 10% customer deposit, registered by 31st of December 2019 at participating dealers. 18 plus, subject to status. Indemnities may be required. SEAT Financial Services.
Greetings, Earthlings. We come in peace. We wish to communicate with your leader.
I'm Howard Hughes. Join me tonight from 10 for a trip into the outer limits.
Untwist the lid on Talk Radio's specimen jar of the psychic, the supernatural, and the simply unexplainable. The Unexplained with Howard Hughes. Tonight from 10, Earth Time on Talk Radio.
Across the UK, online and on DAB Digital Radio. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the show with me, Alexis Conran, here on Talk Radio. You're listening to Talk Politics with The Times. Be well informed. With me, I have Iain Anderson. We're going to be speaking in a moment to John McTiernan, political strategist, Tony Blair's Director of Political Operations. What are your thoughts, Iain? Also important to say in the next hour, we're not going to be talking about later. We're talking about the SNP and the Lib Dems, and of course, what's going to happen with the Conservatives. Will Boris Johnson change his politics, go back to being the kind of politician he was when he was mayor of London, which was kind of quite a one-nation liberal Tory. That's certainly not the noises he's been making in order to get to the top of the Conservative Party, but will he change his tune? We will be talking about all that to come. A reminder, you can watch us live streamed on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook, and give us a call, as plenty of you have. 0344 499 1000 is the number you need. You could tweet us here at Talk Radio. Briefly speaking, before we sort of put Labour to bed in this show, Jeremy Corbyn says he is going to be staying on as leader until the next leader comes along, but that's not scheduled till April. That's a long time away. What are your thoughts on that, Iain?
Yeah, I mean, look, from Boris Johnson's perspective, the longer that Jeremy Corbyn hangs around, certainly through the end of January, when we leave the European Union, we can debate that, but that's how it's going to be presented. We'll have left. It's only for people in the bubble and geeks to get worried about what happens next. We'll have left formally the European Union. No, it's absolute gift to Boris to have Corbyn standing opposite him. Frankly, as weak as he is today, he can probably get even weaker in that kind of sugar rush of victory and supermajority that Johnson has got. I mean, as ever through this, and I think we got the hint of it from John McDonnell actually last Sunday, when I think he said to Andy Marr that the whole anti-Semitism row had played incredibly badly for Labour. He admitted that before Labour got to the poll. McDonnell this morning, I think, is getting it right. He really does want to step back as fast as possible.
He has said he's not going to be stepping in.
Exactly right. He's not going to be an interim leader. No. He's going to step back. I think Corbyn should fall on his sword immediately if he really wants to help the Labour Party, as opposed to helping the sect that he built within the Labour Party.
Well, I think a lot of people who are quite angry, and the reports I've been seeing is that moderates and centrists have been joining the Labour Party in droves, and I think we are going to witness a fight for the soul of the Labour Party in the next coming months. But practically speaking, it feels like now is not the time for this new Parliament to lack an effective opposition. I mean, yes, Boris Johnson's got a majority of 80, but that does not mean that he should be allowed to just run the country as he sees fit on his own. He has to have some sort of opposition. There are rumours again in the press that Jeremy Corbyn's family are urging him to step down, but that his advisors are urging him to stay until the whole process and the whole system of getting a leader in place is there. But as I spoke to Wes Streeting yesterday, there's a lot of anger already building up. They haven't even come to Parliament yet, of this process being sort of overseen by the same people who have been in charge of this disastrous campaign. And that simply won't do for many people. So that's going to be an interesting PLP meeting next week with Jeremy Corbyn and his some new MPs, but a lot of MPs that are not there, I suppose. Let's speak now to a former political strategist, Tony Blair's Director of Political Operations, John McTiernan. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
I guess I'll have to ask you the same question we've been asking our listeners, which is, what do you think swung it for the Conservatives? Quite a lot of Labour voices seem to be conflicted. The Corbyn side of Labour are saying that it was Brexit and it was the media. The other side are saying every single doorstep we knocked on, the problem was Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, the problem was Jeremy Corbyn, and the problem was Jeremy Corbyn's manifesto. And it's interesting that people around Jeremy say it's everybody else's fault, anybody but him. I suspect if Jeremy had done better, they wouldn't be blaming the media. They'd be saying it was Jeremy's triumph. So if Jeremy had won, they'd be going, it's Jeremy's triumph. Jeremy loses, they say it's nothing to do with Jeremy at all. He was present but not actively involved, to use the phrase he himself has used about himself. I think it was a stunning rejection of an extreme far-left Labour manifesto at a time when the government were honestly there for the taking. Get Brexit Done was a often repeated slogan, but it was an empty slogan, and it could have been taken apart by a better leader, but it wasn't. So Jeremy could go now.
You say it could have been taken apart by a better leader, but do you appreciate the conundrum, the sort of the rock and the hard place that any Labour leadership would have been put into, of what do you do with those Labour heartlands? We're going to be speaking in the next hour to Ronnie Campbell and Blythe Valley. I mean, when Blythe Valley decides to go blue because people just want to get Brexit over and done with, I don't quite know where Jeremy Corbyn or any leader could have gone, because had you gone for Remain, yes, you would have maintained your votes in London and Manchester and Liverpool and all the Remain areas. But had you gone for Leave, yes, you may have kept Blythe Valley and the Red Wall up in the Labour heartlands in the Midlands, but you would have lost London, Manchester and Liverpool.
You're just repeating back to me the Corbynites' flawed analysis.
Okay.
We helped Blythe Valley and Sedgefield when Tony Blair was Prime Minister on Tony Blair's policies. We lost them with Corbyn as leader on Corbyn policies. It's really not hard to work out.
But don't you think that Brexit played a bigger part in it?
No, it didn't. If you look at the reasons people give for not voting Labour, Labour's policies and its leadership are by far the biggest single reason why they didn't. You cannot get moderate Middle England, which is what Sedgefield and Blythe Valley and all the seats that we lost actually are nowadays. You can't get moderate Middle England to vote for a leader and a manifesto which is committed to destructively high levels of taxation, which is anti-business to its core, which is with a leader who is personally and philosophically opposed to defending the security of the nation. We failed on every single element that you require to be listened to by the voters. And the problem is, you can't say just because it was these seats have been held by Labour with Labour policies. I've always said that Jeremy Corbyn is personally alien to the Labour tradition. If you want any proof that I've always been right, look at Thursday night's election results.
So do you not think that anything in that Labour manifesto, which was quite radical, I think it was a concerted effort from the Corbyn leadership to put something out there that really pushed all the boundaries in the direction that Jeremy Corbyn wanted to take the party? Do you really think there was nothing in there for people in Blythe Valley that could have made their lives better or would have enticed them to vote for Labour?
No. The whole thing was an utter leftist fantasy based on, and I think what people in Blythe Valley thought, and I think people in the North thought, people in the West Midlands thought, was they believed that this man would increase state spending to the extent that he promised. The state would come back in a 1970s Benite kind of way, and the government would be in every part of your lives again as it was in the 1970s. They believed he would spend the money. They did not believe when he said taxation wouldn't fall on them. They knew the tax would fall on everybody. They did not want the tax. They didn't want the spending. They didn't want government back in their lives. Only 14% or 15% of people in Britain work in the public sector. Labour's manifesto didn't sound like that, did it? Labour's manifesto said, for everything that there is in Britain, government is the solution. Bigger tax, bigger spend, that's the solution. Those ideas were tried and failed in the 70s, tried and failed in the 80s. Jeremy Corbyn put forward a socialist manifesto for a remaking of a capitalist economy into a socialist one, and he got told by the country what the Labour Party has always been told when it puts forward a socialist manifesto: the country doesn't want socialism, it wants capitalism managed by social democrats. We didn't offer that. It was the deepest failure possible. The people in Blythe Valley and Sedgefield are happy to vote for Tony Blair. They'd still be voting for the Labour Party if the party had carried on the tradition of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. We've had 3 elections now where the Labour Party has responded to a defeat by saying, we ran a left-wing manifesto on the Ed Miliband band. The people said, no, let's go more left-wing. Let's go more left-wing. And this is the end of the line for that analysis. The ground to win in the UK is centre ground. And what we're going to watch the next 5 years is Michael Gove, Dominic Cummings, Boris Johnson eating up that centre ground, because they are not the Thatcherites, the fantasy Thatcherites that the Labour Party invented as their enemy to try to scare people into voting for them. The voters saw through Corbyn, saw through Corbynism. He should have gone on Thursday night or Friday morning. He should go now, and we need to clear out of all the people involved in the leadership.
Let me ask you about that then. Jeremy Corbyn has said today in the Observer that he will be staying on till April. The leadership is about 12 weeks, I believe the process takes. I was speaking to Wes Streeting yesterday on the show, who seems very uncomfortable with anyone remotely connected with the leadership to have any say on how this process is going to unfold. What do you think needs to be done right now in the Labour Party?
Well, the beginning of any political renewal after a defeat is being honest about the reasons for the defeat. Jeremy was the reason for the defeat. The leader was the reason for the defeat. It was his party. He took complete control. He controls the NEC. He controls the shadow cabinet. He controlled the manifesto. It was his manifesto. He controlled the strategy. He controlled the messaging. So we can't stop the leadership cadre who lost this election shaping the election the way they wanted. The big question is, what do party members want? Do those young, enthusiastic party members who canvassed, who joined the party, who were excited by Jeremy Corbyn, the prospect of his leadership, do those young people want to have another Corbynite leader, another leader who pushes the party to the left, another leader who takes us in 5 years' time to another defeat? Or do they want something to be done as soon as possible by a Labour government on housing, on pensions, on the social care that their elderly relatives need? If the question that everybody has to ask, and it doesn't matter what the timetable is, the question is the same whenever the vote comes: does the Labour Party want to be a party of government? If it does, it needs to think hard about why it lost, and it should stop making excuses that it was everybody's fault but the leader. You can't have a situation where at conference and at rallies people chant, "Oh, Jeremy Corbyn," to the leader, and then say, "Oh, but by the way, in the election, he had nothing to do with the defeat. Nothing to do with him." That's contradictory, deeply contradictory.
A quick practical question before I have to break from the news, but I do want to get this question in because you know the workings. When you say Jeremy Corbyn has had control of the party, he's had control of the NEC, the fact that the leadership have control of the NEC, how does the party get that back? Because there's going to be a fight for the soul of the Labour Party now between the Momentum Corbyn side and the PLP or the whatever they're being called today by the Corbyn side, who say enough is enough, we've tried this experiment, now we need to get back to getting more to the centre. But if Jeremy Corbyn and that side of the party control the NEC, then is there a way that let's say the moderate wing of the party can grapple the party back?
I mean, of course they can, because if you win the leadership, then you win the party, and then you start replacing the.
So it's going to go down to the membership, basically.
Oh, the party reforms have put this into the hands of the membership. The trade unions can have a big impact on this. The trade unions saved us in the 1980s. Their final decision was our members can't actually afford another Tory government, another Tory government, another Tory government. It's now in the hands of the membership. They've got to decide, do they really think they want and they think they can let the country have another Tory government and another Tory government and another Tory government? Because at this moment, at this stage, we're looking at 10 years of Boris Johnson, which will mean 20 years of Tory government. And if they want to make no compromises with the electorate, which has been the traditional position of the far left in the Labour Party over the years, if you don't make a compromise with the electorate, then the electorate actually do come for you.
John, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. John McTiernan, political strategist, and Tony Blair's Director of Political Operations. It is the 11 o'clock news next.
This is Talk Radio. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio with The Times and The Sunday Times. Know your times.
This week at Tesco, whole beef roasting joints and whole legs of lamb are half price. That's a whole lot of halves off a whole lot of wholes. What a mouthful. Tesco, delivering Christmas for 100 years. Max 2 per customer, selected stores, excludes Express, ends 31st of December.
Mate, this van's suspension is rubbish.
Tell me about it.
Even the radio's had it.
I know, but I'd get nothing if I scrapped it.
Actually, you can get at least £2,000 off a new Ford for it.
You're kidding? With Ford's new for old scrappage scheme, you can get between £2,000 and £6,250 off a new Ford van if you scrap an eligible vehicle with us responsibly. Also, there's 0% APR representative on Ford Acquire. Ford Commercial Vehicles, backbone of Britain. Search Ford Scrappage. Exclusions apply. Contract and register by 31st of December 2019 at participating dealers. Agent ownership criteria apply to scrappage vehicle. Subject to status. Free post full credit. Deposit restrictions apply.
Only just realised it's your turn to host. At John Lewis & Partners, it's not too late to get your home ready with sofas and sofa beds from £299. Still available for delivery by Christmas. Just order your furniture by the 18th of December to make sure it arrives before they do. John Lewis & Partners. For us, it's personal. T's and C's apply. See website for details.
Emma, this is for you. Thanks, Mum. I've got a fabulous set of cameras. Ultra-wide lens and everything.
Jan.
And this is for you, Jack.
Thanks, Mum.
Tracks your heartbeat. Isn't that clever?
Jan, honestly.
I love these are for you.
Oh, thanks.
They're supposed to have amazing bass quality.
Mum!
Enjoy cash back on our Samsung Galaxy range, including £100 when you purchase the Galaxy S10e. Shop from our Galaxy range at your local 3 store or 3.co.uk. Purchased by the 25th of December 2019. Claim from Samsung within 30 days of purchase. T's and C's apply.
At Asda, we know when it comes to passing the chockies round, everyone has their favourite. So this Christmas, whether it's the big green triangle or the sparkly purple one, we have tubs of Quality Street at the very sweet price of just £3.50. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores subject to availability. Tub 650 grams.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
We are
Talk Radio. Across the UK, online and on DAB.
Talk Radio, on the hour news headlines.
I'm James Lower. Good morning. Boris Johnson's promising to improve the NHS by making his £34 billion a year spending pledge law. The Conservatives have also once again ruled out a second referendum on Scottish independence. SNP Westminster leader Ian Blackford, though, says Boris Johnson should respect the wishes of the Scottish people.
He's going to recognise that the SNP are speaking for the people of Scotland. We win this election, we've got 45% of the vote, 80% of the seats. This issue is not going to go away. We will win that right.
Whilst Jeremy Corbyn has said sorry to Labour supporters following their general election defeat, in an open letter he admits some responsibility for what he calls a body blow of a result, but says he's proud the party offered a message of hope. The Lib Dems are also focusing on how to get back on track after a disastrous election, with leader Jo Swinson losing her seat. Former leader Sir Vince Cable says the party should have stayed on message over Brexit.
We had spent several years building up our brand as the party of the people's vote and going back to a referendum but campaigning for Remain, and that had always been very clear. So this sudden switch in the last few months to revoke backfired.
Recovery workers have returned to New Zealand's White Island but haven't been able to find 2 bodies of people missing since Monday's volcanic eruption. They went to an area where their information suggested one victim possibly was. Authorities say they are committed to recovering the pair and will continue the operation. A British father's been killed and his stepson seriously injured after they were shot in a suspected robbery in Argentina. The men were reportedly attacked outside a luxury hotel in the capital, Buenos Aires. Around 40 firefighters worked through the night after a fire broke out in Glasgow city centre. Crews were called just after 2 o'clock this morning to a business on Pitt Street. The fire has now been extinguished, but work is continuing to make sure the area is made safe. And 2 strong aftershocks have been felt near the centre of a powerful earthquake in the Philippines. The latest 6.8 quake caused damage to buildings, power cuts and a hospital had to be evacuated. So weather, a mixture of sunshine and showers today, especially in western parts. Some eastern areas staying dry with sunny spells. Also windy out, especially in the south.
Talk Radio Sports Update.
Liverpool's advantage at the top of the Premier League is now 10 points after they beat bottom of the table Watford 2-0 and second place Leicester drew 1-1 with Norwich. For Chelsea, they've slipped up again at home, losing 1-0 to Bournemouth at Stamford Bridge, whilst West Ham eased pressure on themselves by beating fellow strugglers Southampton. This afternoon, Spurs and Wolves go head-to-head at Molineux as they both look to take advantage of Chelsea's defeat to close the gap on the top 4. Manchester United will be looking to do the same as they welcome Everton. In the final and headline game, Arsenal host Manchester City. And England Cricket World Cup winner Ben Stokes is the favourite to be named Sports Personality of the Year tonight. He's up against F1 champion Lewis Hamilton, sprinter Dina Asher-Smith and Manchester City striker Raheem Sterling.
Talk Radio. Across the UK, online and on DAB Digital Radio.
Talk Politics with Alexis Conran. on Talk Radio.
Man sounds half asleep in that trail. 0344 499 1000 is the number that you need to get in touch with the show. We're asking the question, what do you think swung it for the Conservatives? Still to come, we'll be speaking to Ronnie Campbell, former Labour MP for Blythe Valley, who stepped down and saw Blythe Valley turn blue for the first time. Christine Jardine for the Lib Dems will be joining us on the show. And finally, we'll be speaking to CEO for Best for Britain, Naomi Smith. How well did tactical voting do? Well, not well enough, I think it's obvious to say. But Naomi's going to be here because she has some very, very interesting stories about the polls that they did, that MRP that we kept hearing. And, well, I'll let Naomi tell her own story, but she did warn both Labour and the Liberal Democrats that a result like this was quite likely before both Labour, instigated by the Lib Dems and followed by the SNPs, went, hey, let's go and have an election. But however, Iain, for the SNPs, that election's turned out quite well.
Oh, it's turned out extremely well for the SNP. This is back to the future for the SNP. Mm-hmm. Everyone remember that 2015, 2017 Parliament, where the SNP became, well, firstly, Britain's third party, but also when Miliband lost and everyone was trying to get used to Jeremy Corbyn at that point, they became Britain's most effective opposition. Mm. And given what we've just been debating for the last hour about what's happening to Labour. I know we're going to talk about the Liberal Democrats a bit later as well, but the most cohesive, the most well-formed, the most marshalled set of troops in the House of Commons other than Boris Johnson's Conservatives are going to be Nicola Sturgeon's SNP. And you're going to find, actually, a lot of businesses, a lot of lobby groups turn to the SNP just in this first phase of this next Parliament to be the most effective voice of opposition. Of course, the other thing they're putting on the table, in it having surged in terms of their support is, in fact, you've already heard it from the First Minister again this morning, Scotland voted one way, the rest of the country voted another, and therefore now is the time for a second Scottish independence referendum. It's going to feel, for those of us who are long enough in the tooth, it is going to feel, I think, like the 1980s and the 1990s again, when the Conservatives were in power. They could happily win big majorities without Scotland, where Labour always needed Scotland.
I saw that map, the 1997 Labour landslide, and if you look at Scotland, it was red.
It absolutely was. And actually, just listening to John McTiernan earlier, the thing I would have added to what John said is that Labour should have got a warning shot for all of this. We talk about the red wall in this election. Labour was the dominant party of Scotland. For those of us on the Conservative side, argued for years they had sort of Labour rotten boroughs. They didn't think about what people in Scotland were wanting and feeling and what their aspirations were, and they just ceded pretty much all of that support to the SNP.
Do you think, it is beholden to the British Prime Minister, to the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom to grant Scotland a referendum? Is there any chance in hell that Boris Johnson is going to give Nicola Sturgeon another independence referendum?
Not a chance. I think. Again, let's go back to the history books. I think he's going to behave a little bit like Maggie, who, as support and Labour were running the idea, not just the SNP, were running the idea for a Scottish Assembly, as it was then called, devolution for Scotland. She resisted that constantly through her time in office. So I think he's going to do that all through 2020. Remember, the SNP have a difficult moment coming up in the new year. It's the reason they pulled the firing pin out of this election, because there's the Alex Salmond trial to take place in the spring. That is going to be a difficult moment. He's such an iconic figure of Scottish nationalism. That is going to be a difficult moment for the SNP. But then they've got time to recover from that. So therefore, I expect Westminster, I expect Boris Johnson to firmly resist any demand. Britain voted in one way. Scotland voted to reject independence only 5 years ago. He's going to hang on to that. So therefore, I think the nationalists will continue to build the argument up and to and through the next set of Scottish parliamentary elections for Holyrood, which take place in 2021. Now, if the SNP get a clear majority of seats and votes in that election, I think resisting a second independence referendum is going to be pretty hard to do. And the nationalists think that having Boris Johnson in Downing Street is good for them, given what happened on Thursday night. Boris Johnson, as Conservative leader, took Conservative support down in Scotland. They lost seats. They think it's pitch perfect for them. But if Boris can run an economy that is successful, if the sense is that the country is firing up and powering up, maybe politics in Scotland just becomes a knife and fork question again, like it is in the rest of the country. If you're feeling better economically, if you're seeing jobs, growth, investment coming towards you, and the SNP story, remember, during this election around their delivery or lack of it on health and education, to some extent to the police, that story gets more and more difficult for the nationalists, then Johnson's got everything to play for, and the Conservatives properly become the Conservative and Unionist party all over again.
People were talking about possibly seeing what we saw in Catalonia, for example, in Spain, where even if Boris Johnson does not grant an independence referendum, they may hold one anyway. Not a legally binding one, of course, but which is what we saw in Catalonia. But one wonders. I had a SNP MP on the show yesterday, and I hate to bring it up, but I assume that if Scotland, with quite a valid argument of saying, look, Scotland voted primarily to remain, and we have been taken out as a country against our wishes, I assume that part of Scotland voting for independence is so that they can either maintain or rejoin, or I don't know the technicalities of how that would work, but being part of the European Union. And of course, then you have a question of what do you do with a border between Scotland and and England, because effectively you have two countries, one inside the EU, one outside the EU, and of course the whole headache of the Northern Ireland backstop starts all over again.
Yeah, so the two really big issues that the SNP, and this is more that the SNP has to face this argument than Boris Johnson, is number one, what do you do about the border? That question has already been asked to Nicola Sturgeon, and the answer is complicated. It's not a soundbite.
Well, what was funny is the SNP MP that I spoke to yesterday said, well, there's goodwill on both sides, a solution will be found. And I said, have you not been listening to the last 3 years?
That sounds scarily like what we heard in Norway.
For the last 3 years we've been hearing that.
But the other issue that is there, it was there in the independence referendum in 2014, and remains for a lot of Scots voters, is the question of the currency and the economy.
Yeah.
The SNP has not nailed the answer to this question firmly yet for most Scottish voters. And if you look at a number of the seats that the Scots Tories lost, they only lost them in a marginal way. Yeah, I mean, they lost them by 800 votes. It is entirely possible that if Boris Johnson performs effectively, as I say, the economy powers ahead, that the demand for independence withers. The SNP has to really focus in on answering the questions that were there in 2014, the currency, and the question that's going to be there on the 1st of February this year, the question that comes up in terms of the border. They don't have clear answers on those key issues right now.
What did you make of Nicola Sturgeon's reaction to Jo Swinson losing her seat?
Were you up?
It was like a cup final goal, last-minute goal.
Yes, I didn't.
I saw a replay. I didn't see I wasn't up.
Well, I was up for that moment. I have to say, I didn't quite realise that Nicola had that view about Jo Swinson. But look, I mean, we saw pictures on the front pages of today's newspapers of a very, very, very triumphant-looking Boris Johnson when he saw the exit poll. Politics is a brutal business, Alexis, and that was the raw emotion of another seat falling to the SNP and the SNP's leader being pretty darn happy about that.
Do you mean this photograph of the cover of the Sunday Times?
I'm looking
Boris
at the Sunday
Johnson,
Times.
Cripes, I've won. And it's him and Carrie Simmons celebrating. I wouldn't be as cynical as to say that this was staged, but my attention has been drawn to the 3 cups of snacks there from the Co-op. And I don't know. I'll just leave it. I'll just leave it there. Now we've got a fantastic caller because we're talking about the SNP, and Carla has called from Glasgow. Carla, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alexis, and thanks for taking my call.
Enlighten us. You're up there. Have we got it completely wrong?
Well, I think your man there's got it wrong when he said that the people in Scotland voted for the SNP because they were pro-Europe rather than pro-independence. Because if that was the case, why did the Lib Dems do so badly? The SNP said they wanted to stop Brexit, but the Lib Dems were pretty clear. And I know that's a phrase that's been used a lot when people aren't normally clear in this election, but they were very clear that they were just going to revoke Article 50, so that would have been it done and dusted. And yet the Lib Dems did so badly here in Scotland, even to the fact that the leader lost her seat. So I've got to disagree with your man there. I don't think that was a vote for Europe. I think that was a vote for independence.
So, Carla, the last poll that I saw was people wanting independence it's very close. It's still about 50-50. It was 51 against independence, 49 pro-independence. So I think we can, in the margin of error, let's just call it 50-50. But what do you think? What do you think the atmosphere is going to be in Scotland if, as Iain said, come the 2021, I believe, Holyrood elections, return a clear SNP majority in Holyrood? Can Boris Johnson really keep Scotland at bay from having that second independence referendum?
No, and I don't think we'll have to wait. This is my personal opinion. I don't think we have to wait to the next general election because things are already in place and the movement is growing steadily here, and we've managed to take a lot of Labour voters.
You seem to have taken them all.
Yeah, because Labour don't listen to what people want anymore. The policies in Scotland with the inequality in pay, I mean, the SNP, when they took over, I'm speaking personally from Glasgow, when the SNP took over Glasgow City Council, they found that the Labour Council there hadn't been paying men and women equally, and they had to actually sell off 3 of the iconic Glasgow buildings in order to give these women the money, the thousands each that they were owed. I mean, 15,000, 20,000 each that they were owed. So that's why they lost the Labour people. But there's such a movement, and the atmosphere here in Scotland is very, very buoyant just now. That the people have actually got their message across, and I don't think Boris Johnson can deny the people the right to choose. And even if they say, no, we don't want independence, well, then he'll be happy. So what is he worried about? Why doesn't he just give us it?
Well,
and that's it?
I'm sure you can ask the same question of the second referendum on the Brexit question. I've just seen a stat. I'll come back to that. But a question I want to ask, because I'm running out of time, and I want to ask this question. Iain made a couple of points about 2 definite questions that the SNP haven't come up with answers to just yet. And how important is it to you, Carla, when you're talking about Scottish independence, and if you're for it, which I gather from your voice that you're for the independence, but the question of the currency and the question of if Scotland wants to join or rejoin the EU somehow, maybe the currency question gets answered because you'd have to adopt the euro. But
I don't believe that.
Well, again, but here are all those questions, and a land border between what essentially is going to be a non-EU country, which is England, and an EU country, which is Scotland. I mean, are you going to demand answers and clarity on those? Because those are pretty important. We've seen what happens when people make a decision to leave, but actually have got none of the particulars in place. Do you really want what the whole of the United Kingdom has been going through to happen again for Scotland?
It's been happening for a long, long time. This isn't a new thing. And why shouldn't we use sterling? Why can't we use sterling? Why do we have to change the money we've been using for centuries? We can use sterling. Sterling belongs to Scotland as well as England.
Well,
so
if you plan...
it's a small detail.
It's not that small, though, Carla, is it? And also, if you plan to join the EU, current rules, I believe, stand that if you join the EU, you are part of the single currency, the euro. So you'd have to take the euro. But what would happen on the border, for example? An EU country bordering with a non-EU country. How do you solve that?
I don't think there'll be a hard border between Scotland and England. Scotland and England, just because Scotland want independence from England, doesn't mean they don't want to be good neighbours or we hate the English or anything like that.
But you understand the concept between a non-EU country having a land border with an EU country. Different rules apply to different countries, and you have to regulate that, and you'd have to do it with a border. Carla, thank you for your call. I only have to cut it short because I have to go to a break. I'm being told off by everybody behind the glass here. 0344 499 1000 is the number that you need to let us know your thoughts. I still want to hear your thoughts on why you think Boris Johnson won this election. What was it that won it? 0344 499 1000 is the number you need. You could tweet us at Talk Radio.
Talk Politics on Talk Radio.
This is
Talk Radio. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio with The Times and The Sunday Times. Know your times.
Grab yourself a Now TV Sky Cinema Pass and you and the family can experience Christmas telly with all the trimmings. Enjoy the latest blockbusters, including The Grinch, Mary Poppins Returns, and your favourite Christmas classics. And with over 40 movies added every month, there's always something new to discover. All for just $11.99 a month. So, what's your TV got for you this Christmas? Search Now TV. 18 plus content streaming this Christmas. Month pass auto renews unless cancelled. Terms apply.
I'm Ben. I used to be homeless. I'd sleep in the train station, stuff newspapers in my clothes to keep warm. Sometimes I thought I wouldn't wake up. No one should have to live like this. The Crisis Christmas Centre was a safe place. We got hot meals, health checks and support. In the new year, they helped me find work and a home. This Christmas, you can reserve a place for someone who's homeless for just £28.87. Go to crisis.org.uk today and help someone like me take their first steps out of homelessness. Thank you.
At Asda, we know when it comes to passing the chockies round, everyone has their favourite. So this Christmas, whether it's the big green triangle or the sparkly purple one, we have tubs of Quality Street at the very sweet price of just £3.50. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores subject to availability. Tub 650 grams.
I'll give you 20p for it. 50p? £5.
Isn't it great when you get more for something than you expected? Scrap or part exchange with Vauxhall and we'll give you a guaranteed £4,000 towards a new Crossland X or Grandland X with 4.9% APR representative. Search Vauxhall Trade It. T's and C's and restrictions apply. Trade-in car must be registered in your name for at least 90 days. Available on conditional sale and personal contract purchase only. Subject to status 18+. Vauxhall Finance. Other deposit contributions may be available if you don't have a trade-in vehicle.
Your online life is slick and on point. Just how you like it. Except your email. That's a right mess. Chaos. The new Yahoo Mail app will sort all of that out. Gmail account, AOL, Outlook, stick them all on there. Looking for something? Boom! There it is. Need that ticket right now? Whoa! It's already there. And you can unsubscribe from the junk in one tap. We've rethought your email and your life just got tidier. Download the Yahoo Mail app now.
Talk Radio Traffic and Travel.
In Wiltshire, the M4 westbound at junction 17 for Chippenham on towards 18 for Bath is closed. That's because of accident investigation work. Congestion for about 2 miles. In Kent, the M25 anti-clockwise just before junction 2 for the Darrant interchange. There's an accident there as well. All traffic is being temporarily held. And in Surrey, the M23 southbound from the M25 on towards junction 9 for Gatwick Airport. One lane is closed because of a breakdown. I'm Ellen Collin.
Take 26.
Enjoy Oyster Bay Sauvignon, 12 bottles of Budweiser, Taylor's Select Reserve Port, and many, many more for just £7 each.
I know it's Christmas, but you're getting overexcited again.
Our latest deal, Co-op. It's what we do. Offer subject to availability until stocks last on selected lines. See participating stores for details. Offer ends 3rd of January. Please drink responsibly.
Outspoken opinions and decisive debate. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the show with me, Alexis Conran, here on Talk Radio. You're listening to Talk Politics with the Times. Be well informed. With me, I still have Iain Anderson, former political advisor and chairman of the Cicero Group. We are trying to get hold of Ronnie Campbell. We're having some trouble getting him on the line, but as soon as we do, he will be joining us on the show. A reminder that we're going to be speaking as well to Naomi Smith, CEO for Best for Britain. We're going to be talking about the tactical vote. And after the 12 o'clock news, Nigel Evans, Conservative MP for Ribble Valley in Lancashire, is going to be joining me here in the studio. I've spoken to Nigel many a time, but we've never actually come into the studio. So get your questions in for Nigel Evans. You can go or pick up the phone and speak directly to him. Reminder, you can watch us being live streamed on our YouTube channel. And if you want to take part in the show, I'm asking the question to all our listeners: what do you think won it for Boris Johnson? What was the main reason he came out with a majority of 80? 0344 499 1000 is the number you need. Or you could tweet us here at Talk Radio. You can even text the word talk to 87222. Iain, we've been talking about how we're going to see the aftermath, the sort of soul searching for the Labour Party is going to try and find who it belongs to. Does it belong to Momentum? Does it belong to the return of the centrists, for example, or the Blairites, or whatever they're being called this month? What about the Liberal Democrats? Jo Swinson, it's fair to say, had a bad campaign, but both personally but also politically. It seemed that the polls in the beginning they weren't recognising who she was. She was a sort of an unknown face. But then when she became known, the polls seemed to move away from her. Also, that big, bright, shiny, I suppose, balance to the Brexit party. Only no-deal Brexit is a proper Brexit. You had the balance of the Liberal Democrats saying, if we get in government, we are going to revoke Article 50 straight away. And also sort of getting in there as a brand new unknown face saying, you are looking at a possible your next Prime Minister. Did they make mistakes, or were the Liberal Democrats always doomed to fail in an election of the first past the post where they were just going to be naturally squeezed?
They made catastrophic mistakes. I mean, number one, I live in a constituency where the Liberal Democrats were real challengers in southwest London, yeah? And I started getting leaflets coming through my door saying...
me too.
Lots of leaflets.
Yeah.
I mean, I
live in a safe Labour seat, and I had at least 10 leaflets.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've counted them, I've kept them. I had 26 pieces of literature. Now, there's an interesting question there about spending limits, but I had 26, both national and local, pieces of information through our letterbox. I am going to be your next Prime Minister, said Jo Swinson. Apart from the fact, as you quite rightly said, most people didn't know who the hell she was because she'd only been, by the time the campaign began, the campaign that she pulled the firing pin on herself, she'd only been Liberal Democrat leader for less than 100 days. People didn't, I mean, unlike Boris Johnson, who's been on the national stage forever, people just didn't know who she was. And the idea, therefore, that she could walk into number 10 was simply unbelievable. Secondly, and I've spoken to Liberal Democrat strategists about this, if Liberal Democrat and strategist is a sensible sentence.
Iain, come on, now.
Sorry. Anyway, the idea of revoke, yeah? Now, they had message tested that with the electorate in September. Sounded good. They just won 20% and over of the vote in the European elections. It looked clear. It looked the antidote to Corbyn, who looked like a bit of a muddle, and Johnson taking us out. But they didn't then retest the idea of revoke after Boris Johnson got his oven-ready microwavable deal. And so they took this into an election. And where I could see, I think probably just ordinary punters could see, well, watching that BBC Question Time debate in the middle of the campaign, where she was
This is where each leader was taking questions from the audience.
For half an hour, although, to be fair, watching Jo Swinson do a half hour, it felt like 4 hours, because nobody was applauding anything she was saying. Now, huge debate as to how the audience was composed, but even Remainers, even people who really strongly supported Britain staying in the EU at this point, said to her, I think revoke is insulting. I'd happily go for a second referendum, but I think revoke is insulting. And then the third thing that came to bear, and this is this is just a personal taste, it's a sense thing, some of the stuff that we were talking about at the start of the show, the more the electorate saw of Jo Swinson for some reason, a multi-faceted reason, the less they liked her. I mean, they started the campaign on 18 points and they ended the campaign on 12 points nationally. So she went backwards for those three strategic, really bad mistakes.
It is a tricky one. I think perhaps the Liberal Democrats were guilty of taking that European election result way too seriously and not realising that people vote completely differently and with completely different criteria in a general election than they do in the European election. We will be speaking to Naomi Smith later on from Best for Britain, who I think she tried to warn both Labour and the Liberal Democrats on calling that election. But where do the Liberal Democrats go next? Unlike Labour, Jo Swinson, well, she has lost her seat, so she's no longer in Parliament, but she is not she's stepping down as leader. And for those of you listening saying, well, she has to be stepping down as leader, she's not in Parliament, may I remind you that Caroline Lucas is not the leader of the Green Party. There's a joint leadership of the Green Party. You can lead a political party before you...
but not under the Liberal Democrat rules, Alexis.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No, the rules are pretty clear. You have to be in Parliament.
You have to have a seat
it's just a slam dunk. It's a constitutional reality for her. She can't lead the Liberal Democrats.
But only particular because of the Liberal Democrat rules.
Because of their rule book.
So they differ from party to party.
Because of their rule book.
Okay, fair enough. I did not know that. Thanks for setting me right. But at the moment, we've got a Davies going to stand in alongside the chair of the Liberal Democrats. So they've taken that decisive action. We're going to come back to the Liberal Democrats. I want to get to our next guest. We finally got hold of him. Ronnie Campbell joins me on the line. Ronnie, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Good morning. I guess I'm going to ask you the same question I've been asking our listeners, which is, what do you think swung it for the Conservatives? And may we remind our listeners that you've served as a Labour MP for Blythe Valley since 1987. And to my knowledge, Blythe Valley has never been a Tory seat. And last Thursday, you saw it go blue. What were your feelings and why do you think it happened?
Well, I was devastated at the result, of course. Why it happened? Well, I think it's two factors, obviously, and one was the referendum and the people wanting another referendum, people taking no notice of the first one. And the other one, of course, was Jeremy Corbyn on the doorsteps as well. Although that I would have argued the other way, because I think Jeremy's straight as a die. I think he's a very honest and principled man, but the media has portrayed him as a devil, and and that gets through to people, and that's one of the reasons, I suppose, along with the ignoring the first vote and demanding another referendum, and in all reality, if you have a referendum, God forbid we have another referendum, let's take notice of it. Let's not go and argue for another one because we didn't like the result of the first one. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't go down well. Even my wife voted to remain. I voted to leave, of course. She voted to remain. And yet she said if there was another referendum forced upon her, I would vote to leave. Mm-hmm. Because we have to take notice of the first one. That's democracy. No, listen, if you don't like referendums, then get a bill through Parliament that we'll never have any referendums again.
But
that's the way to deal with it.
Ronnie, let me go back to you said, you know, one of the main reasons, okay, the not respecting the first vote. Let's put that aside for a second. But you mentioned the media. Now, the problem with Jeremy Corbyn's been leader since 2015. The media, it's not a new thing. You saw back in 2017,
the social media as well. I mean, I'm not putting all the blame on the media as we know it. That social media out there, this Twix, what I call it, and I never use a Facebook and what have you. I mean, some of the stuff on there. I mean, there was one story said he was a paedophile. I mean, you know, who puts this stuff on? Who allows it to go on there?
Look, it is appalling, and you know, we have to condemn it. And there are the studies that showed that over 80% of all of Conservative Party ads on Facebook were judged to be misleading or inaccurate, whereas none of Labour's were. But you can put all that aside. But you mentioned that the media had vilified Jeremy Corbyn. That's not a new thing, Ronnie. We knew that for ages. And isn't it true that if you want to deliver that manifesto, which was quite an ambitious manifesto, you can't deliver any of it unless you get into power? And it was quite clear very early on, a lot of critics of Jeremy Corbyn from the Labour side said, this man is not capable of delivering a victory for the Labour Party. He's not capable of actually putting you in power in order to deliver these progressive views.
I'll remind you, not so long ago when we had the last election, he was 20% behind in the polls. And
sure, but he still didn't win. Swung. Yeah, but nearly swung it. Nearly swung it is not really good enough, though, Ronnie, is it?
But 20% behind, you would have thought we're going to get beat. We were going to beat this time, but we didn't. But there wasn't an issue there with Jeremy Corbyn.
He still failed to win an election against possibly one of the weakest prime ministers in history, Theresa May. And also, you have Boris Johnson winning in seats like your former seats in Blythe Valley, across the Labour wall, winning seat after seat, when Boris Johnson's government have been in power for 9 years, responsible for austerity, responsible for the difficulties that people in those various constituencies have suffered. And you're telling me that actually it's the media's fault that they didn't vote for Jeremy Corbyn. If the manifesto was so powerful, full of ideas and believable, why didn't they take that opportunity to vote for it?
Yeah, well, fair point. I kind of fathom that one up me. Why a working class area like Blythe and Sedgefield and the Dalton, the rest of them, why working class people actually went out and voted for the Tories. I'm listening to people. I've been out the weekend and I've been listening. And I still haven't got the answer yet why they voted for him. I've gotten some answers. I don't like that Corbyn. No, well, okay, fine. That's a personal thing, that, you know. I think maybe the manifesto was too ambitious. There were too many programmes in it. And people were asking, well, you know, you got a lot there. Where's all the money coming from, you know? There's that to it, of course. Maybe we should have had 2 or 3, 4 maybe good policies and we just rammed them home, basically. I think that would be the best way to deal with it, because I think we had too many policies.
A question.
People just didn't believe we could deliver, actually.
A question from Iain Anderson.
Ronnie, morning. A couple of things from me. You've talked about, you know your electorate extremely well. Of course you do. And there's 2 things there. I mean, you look at all the numbers around, you know, your neck of the woods. Number 1 is people voted Brexit. And number 2 is, you know, your traditional support is very, very patriotic. And on all those tests, not nationalists, they're patriotic. And on all those tests, Jeremy Corbyn failed, didn't he? I mean, he couldn't work out when the Queen's speech was on, which raises huge doubts as to whether or not he actually likes the Queen. He didn't sort the anti-Semitism stuff. He couldn't work out where he was and when we were going to do Brexit. And then, you know, you go back a bit, and we talked about it earlier on the show, people couldn't actually work out whether or not he liked the IRA or didn't like the IRA. I mean, on every single test, the kind of people that would willingly support you, just in this election, Jeremy Corbyn fell flat as a pancake.
Well, on some issues, of course he did. But then again, The programme was there. People were there to see it, and people did, the working people, and a lot of good stuff there for working people. I mean, 5% increase straight away on your wages, which you've never had for the last 9 years. I mean, working people were voting against that. I very much doubt it.
Because he didn't like Britain.
But then again,
he didn't like Britain, that's what he thought.
Well, when I listen to the people, they weren't bothered about the 5%, they weren't bothered about that, they weren't bothered about the, they just went out and voted because they didn't like Jeremy Corbyn, or they didn't like the way the Labour Party was acting on the Leave vote.
Ronnie, before we go, because we're running out of time, what do you think Labour need to do to get Blythe Valley back from the Conservatives in the next election?
Oh, well, it's got to work hard, because you can bet your bottom dollar the Tories will work hard to keep with what. There's going to be billions coming into Blythe. I keep telling everybody this weekend, you're going to get, you'll be eating ice cream off the floor. but we've got to work hard. We've got to really work hard and find out what went wrong and then put that right. And, of course, a new leader coming along in a few, 10 weeks or 10, 11, 12 weeks.
And do you think the answer, do you think the answer will be a new leader from the Jeremy Corbyn side of the party, or has the Jeremy Corbyn socialist experiment been tried? It's been tried on 2 general elections, both failed to win an election. It's time to put that social experiment to bed and go back to the centrist Labour Party that was successful at winning elections.
Yes, I think there's some good policies there that was in the manifesto, this manifesto. It's good, but we could take a few of them. As I said before, I think you take 3 or 4 of them. I wouldn't nationalise too many things. I would say I'm going to nationalise the rail. That's very popular, the rail, maybe the water. And that's it, no more. Let's keep it at that. And let's keep it more basic rather than go for this and that and that. And I think there was too much in it for the people to say, you'll never get all them through. You're going to cost a fortune to get all them through. And I think that's a fair point. That's a point I've heard. Okay. I've heard people say, well, I didn't believe your manifesto. Some good stuff in it, but it was too ambitious. It would have cost a fortune. Okay. Who was going to pay for it?
Okay. Ronnie Campbell, as ever, thank you so much for joining me on the line this Sunday morning. Ronnie Campbell there, former Labour MP for Blythe Valley, who stood down in this election. 0344 499 1000 is the number you need to let us know your thoughts. What, in your opinion, swung it for Boris Johnson in this election? You could tweet us your answer at Talk Radio, but we'd like to hear from you. 0344 499 1000, that's the number you need.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
Talk Radio. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio with The Times and The Sunday Times. Know your times.
You're in charge of hiring, and Indeed has solutions like sponsored jobs, which increase the visibility of your post in search results to make sure the right candidates find you faster. And we give you free clones of your best employees. What's that? Oh, no cloning. But there are sponsored jobs.
See why more than 250,000 companies in the UK use Indeed for hiring. Visit Indeed.com/redeem today and get a free sponsored job upgrade on your first posting. Terms and conditions apply.
At Lidl, we're big on all you want for Christmas. And we've just won Quality Food Awards Christmas Retailer of the Year. We're big on award-winning sparkle and bronze turkeys getting gold. Big on our show-stopping afters coming first. Big on a Christmas you can believe it. Now that's big on award-winning quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
Millions of people are missing out by having a current account that doesn't pay them any interest on their hard-earned money. TSB offers interest to all their Plus account customers for no monthly fee. Plus, you can stop your friends and family missing out by recommending the Plus account to them. And when they switch, you'll both earn £75. Search online or visit your local branch. Terms and conditions apply.
It's the most wonderful time of the year, where dark fists are pumping and horses are jumping and football, my dear.
But could it be better? Sky Bet's season of giving begins December 19th. Check the app for wonderful offers throughout the sportsman's period. Sky Bet, that's betting better. 18 plus begambleaware.org. Selected matches, markets and races. Available until January 2nd. Eligibility restrictions, T's and C's apply.
Today, it's Man United v Everton and Arsenal v Man City in a huge afternoon of football.
And with Now TV, you can watch both games live for a one-off payment of just $9.99. Hold on, they're checking with VAR.
That's confirmed. It's $9.99.
Good call. Game on. So, to only pay for the games that matter to you, grab a Now TV Sky Sports Day Pass. Search Now TV Sports. 18 plus, content streamed via internet. Full terms apply.
Talk Radio, traffic and travel.
In Wiltshire, the M4 westbound at junction 17 for Chippenham on towards 18 for Bath is closed. That's because of accident investigation work, congestion for about 2 miles. In Kent, the M25 anti-clockwise just before junction 2 for the Darrant interchange, there's an accident there as well. All traffic has been temporarily held. And in Surrey, the M23 southbound from the M25 on towards junction 9 for Gatwick Airport, one lane is closed because of a breakdown. I'm Ellen Collin.
Take 26.
Enjoy Oyster Bay Sauvignon, 12 bottles of Budweiser, Taylor Select Reserve Port, and many, many more for just £7 each.
I know it's Christmas, but you're getting overexcited again.
Our latest deal, Co-op. It's what we do. Offers subject to availability until stocks last on selected lines. See participating stores for details. Offer ends 3rd of January. Please drink responsibly.
Across the UK, online and on DAB, the Independent Republic of Mike Graham on Talk Radio.
Blasted rhetoric from the Banana Republic.
Join me, the Reverend Mike Graham. Revolutionary, rebellious, rebuilt, rebranded.
Dangerous mid-morning debate with the great dictator.
The Independent Republic of Mike Graham.
Tomorrow morning from 10
on Talk Radio. Outspoken opinions and decisive debate. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the show with me, Alexis Conran, here on Talk Radio. You're listening to Talk Politics with The Times. Be well informed. With me, I have Iain Anderson, former political advisor and chairman of the Cicero Group. And I'm delighted to say we're joined on the line by Christine Jardine, Liberal Democrat MP. Welcome back to the show, Christine.
Hello. Hello. Nice to be back.
Good to have you on, and congratulations for getting re-elected.
Thank you.
I want to ask you a specific question. It's in the Observer today. It's on page 3. Naomi Smith, chairman of CEO for Best for Britain, is going to join us imminently on the line. There are reports that Vince Cable, Tim Farron, Best for Britain, I know, showed polling before the election was called and warned the Liberal Democrats that any election before Brexit had been done would be catastrophic. It seems like they have been proven correct. And it seems that the Liberal Democrats ignored that advice based on the success that you had with the European elections. Now, people vote completely differently when they vote for European elections than they do in general elections. Do you feel that perhaps you made a huge strategic mistake in giving Boris Johnson this election when, in fact, you could have kept Boris Johnson as a powerless Prime Minister stuck in Downing Street with a working majority of minus 43?
That's quite a specific question.
It is.
But at this point, if you like, I, like every other Liberal Democrat in the country, are still taking in what happened. How we managed to so narrowly miss in so many seats, how we managed to increase our vote share and our votes in seats up and down the country, and, you know, lost the leader. And ended up one seat down. It's just.
But my specific question, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that hindsight is a wonderful thing, but my specific question is: you were warned about this. You were warned by several people that going into an election with Brexit not resolved was not going to turn out well for either yourselves or the Labour Party. And all these people have been proved to be correct. So my question is, why did you not listen to them?
Well, you're implying that I didn't.
Well, you went ahead. I mean, it was the Liberal Democrats that triggered the election.
But, you know, obviously, if you look at the results, how could anyone say, if you look at the results of this election, that we got it right? I mean, that would just be ridiculous for me to sit here and defend that decision. The team who decided that looked at it and decided to do it. They obviously felt at the time it was the right thing to do. They obviously felt that it was, if you like, a last chance to stop Brexit because we weren't going to get the referendum. The Labour Party had let us down continuously on this. And that is obviously what they felt. Was that the right thing to do with hindsight? No, it wasn't. And it would be childish of me to suggest anything else. Going forward, what we have to do is learn the lessons of that mistake. And what we have to do is look at why it wasn't what they thought it would be. And you're saying, that Tim Farron warned and Vince warned, and, these were discussions, presumably, which went on, and, advice was either listened to or not. I'm not in a position to say because I don't know, but I think that it would be really churlish of me to stand here now and say it was the right decision, because patently we ended up losing ground on 2017 in terms of seats, not in terms of public support, which is the annoying thing. If you look at the public support for our position, it is greater than it was in.
Well, you increased your share by 4.2%, which is the most from any party.
Of any of the parties.
Let me get.
Also in Scotland, we were the only people to take a seat from the SNP. Ironically,
that is also true. Iain Anderson's got a question.
Yeah,
Chrissy, your thought there. I think your real honesty there about getting stuff wrong. In the aftermath of this is refreshing to hear from politicians generally. But so, for me, the revoke thing kind of worked before Johnson got his deal, and you guys stuck in that place. But I want to ask you something about where you go next.
Okay.
So we're leaving. We are leaving. I mean, Guy Verhofstadt tweeted, Britain is clear now. It's leaving. Where do the Liberal Democrats go on the 1st of February? When we've left?
Well, that assumes that we are only about and have only been about Brexit. I was a Liberal Democrat before there was any suggestion of any referendum of any sort. And most people in the party are Liberal Democrats because they're liberal, not because of Brexit. We are Remainers because we are liberal. We are not liberal because we're Remainers. And I think that's important to remember. And what we do now is we pick ourselves up and we hold this government to account on the issues that matter to people every day. The biggest single issue facing us all is climate change. And we need to make sure this government acts to protect the environment, acts to reverse the damage that's been done. But we also need to stand up to this government when it comes to the rising poverty in this country. The fact that, in the last Parliament, a homeless person died at the entrance to Westminster, in the subway entrance, in the 5th largest economy in the world. A homeless person died on the very doorstep of Parliament. Now, those are the things that are wrong in this country. Those are the things that we have to tackle. And we, as a party that represents the views of so many people in this country, even if we've only got 11 MPs, we represent the views of the people in this country, and we have to stand up for them. That is what is important now. And minimising the damage. We have to work to make sure that Brexit doesn't do the damage, the catastrophic damage that it could.
OK. Christine, as ever, thank you very much for joining us this Sunday morning. Christine Jardine, the Liberal Democrat MP for Edinburgh West. I'm sorry to have cut it short there, but we're running all out of time. And I also want to hear from Naomi Smith, CEO for Best for Britain, who joins me on the line now. Welcome to the show, Naomi.
Morning.
You've managed to catch up on some sleep, I take it.
Just a bit, yeah.
Just a bit. Naomi, I know you were listening in to some of the conversation there with Christine. I'm looking at, it was page 3, I think, of The Observer today. And I also heard you on the Remainiacs podcast earlier this week. You warned the Liberal Democrats and Labour about calling an election before Brexit was sorted. And it seems that no one listened. Have I got this right?
Well, the backbenchers listened,
Mm-hmm.
so all credit to them. And we know that even one frontbencher took our data into shadow cabinet to try and persuade them as well. But a few things happened. First of all, there wasn't much belief that Boris Johnson would go for a general election. If I cast my mind back to the early summer, I was warning the Remain community, including politicians of several parties, that we needed to be prepared for one. And I also had data showing that if the Brexit Party stood down for Johnson, that Johnson could easily get a very large majority, perhaps even as large as a 100-seat majority it was looking like at one point. And I was told two things by senior people in several parties. Nonsense, Naomi. Once the Prime Minister gets the keys to number 10, they don't tend to ever want to leave it. He wouldn't be so foolish as to risk going for an election in the way Theresa May did, with that 2017 result so fresh in their memories as having not gone the way they wanted. And second of all, Nigel Farage can taste power, taste the first few Brexit Party MPs getting elected. There's no way he would stand down candidates for Johnson. And I begged to differ. And I had data showing that if a general election happened, it would be a disaster for the Remain community, and that Brexit, and probably the hardest possible Brexit, would happen.
Now, you've sort of been proven to be Cassandra-like. You forecasted it, and now it is the reality. But what happened to tactical voting? Best for Britain, I think your site was visited by hundreds of thousands of people on polling day. Did tactical voting spectacularly fail, or was tactical voting, even if it was, successful, was just a sticking plaster to a gaping wound? That tactical voting was never going to prevent this massive majority that Boris Johnson managed to secure?
Well, as soon as it was clear that Corbyn and Swinson were not able to do what Farage and Johnson had done, it was then just left up to the voters to do tactical voting. There was no other tool in our arsenal to fight fire with fire. From our early indications, and of course we're still crunching the numbers, it does appear that there was a considerable tactical vote operation that was effective. We think that we probably had an impact of about a 5% swing from Lib Dem towards Labour, but what we weren't able to counter was a direct swing from Labour to the Conservatives, from Labour voters who, lifelong Labour voters who felt that they didn't want to risk a Corbyn-led government, and so went straight to the Conservatives.
I mean, picking over and looking over the results, what I'm hearing from a lot of family friends, friends of friends, there is that massive sense of disappointment, not directed at people such as yourself, Best for Britain, and Gina Miller with her campaign for tactical voting, but do you accept that quite a few of those people that marched for the second referendums, for the people's votes, for all of those, the millions of people that took to the street, feel massively let down? Again, not by the tactical voting websites, but by the actions of both the Labour leadership and the Liberal Democrats. I had people coming to me on the day saying there's conflict between two tactical voting websites. What do I do? Why can't these people get everything together? I mean, it feels like the Leave vote managed to unite, where we saw that pact with the Conservatives and the Brexit Party, and the Remain vote, which, if we add up the votes that went to Remain parties, they outnumber the votes that the Conservatives, Brexit Party and UKIP went to. So do you appreciate the fact that people, Remainers, feel hugely frustrated and let down?
Of course, and I'm among them. We have several factors against this. You've mentioned, of course, the inability of our side to get its act together in the way that there seemed to be much more discipline on the Leave side to consolidate their support behind the Conservative Party rather than splitting it out across several parties as we've done.
And why do you think that was, Naomi? Why couldn't they get their act together? Was it that dislike of Joe Swinson, of Jeremy Corbyn? What got in the way?
Well, Well, I think what we do have to remember is that in 60 seats, our side did get its act together in the Unite to Remain Pact, and honourable mentions to Plaid Cymru and the Greens, who were absolutely brilliant in doing that, and the Liberal Democrats too. You'll have to ask Labour people why they felt they couldn't participate in that. I know that there were lots of backbenchers and lots of Labour PPCs who were very up for doing that, but would have faced deselection if they'd said so publicly. But of course, you've also got to blame the voting system. As you touched on, if you add up the votes for parties that supported a second referendum, they outweigh those that voted for the Conservatives and the Brexit Party in a reversal order of what we saw in the referendum. So 52% of people backing those that don't want Brexit and 48% of those that do. The country has moved on. We've had 3.5 years since that vote. Poll after poll this year has shown a lead for Remain. But now, because of our first-past-the-post voting system, because of the inability of the Remain leaders to work together effectively, the will of the people is going to be ignored, and we're going to leave the EU in January.
Naomi, I'm late for the news, but one last question. What happens to Best for Britain now?
Well, we're not going anywhere. Obviously, it's a time for reflection, and there's no immediate rush to come to any kind of conclusion as to how we're going to operate going forwards. But we're not going anywhere, as much as I can tell you right now.
OK. Naomi, thank you very much for your time. That's Naomi Smith, their CEO for Best for Britain. And I'm late for the news, but what remains for me to say is thank you to Iain Anderson, a former political advisor and chairman of Cicero Group. Iain, I've really enjoyed your company. Thank you.
Great to be here on this beautiful day as we open a new chapter.
Definitely a new chapter. And that new chapter will be firmly opened after the 12 o'clock news, when I'm going to be joined in the studio live by long-time friend and guest of the show, Mr. Nigel Evans, Conservative MP, returned Conservative MP for Ribble Valley. Get your calls in. You can speak directly to Nigel and myself. 0344 499 1000 is the number you need, and you can continue watching us live streamed on YouTube.
Talk Radio.
Contact Talk Radio. Call 0344 499 1000. Text Talk and your message to 87222. Texts cost 25 pence plus your standard network rate. Or you can tweet us at Talk Radio.
This is Talk Radio.
The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio with The Times and The Sunday Times. Know your times.
Hey there, if you've got a flawlessly powdered nose for a bargain, this weekend at Boots, get 15% off selected fragrance and premium beauty, including the Estee Lauder Advanced Night Repair 50ml, was £78, now £66.30. So gift like you get them at the What to Buy the Fiercest Beauty Queen boutique. Hurry, offer ends 16th of December at larger stores and boots.com.
The big red building on Golders Green Road.
At Gold's Menswear, big men can choose from a huge range of top designer suits, jackets, blazers and trousers. They can fit anyone. Extra tall, short, portly and king size up to 70-inch chest. All with savings of up to 75% off RRP. Gold's also offer an alteration service while you wait. Plus Logan Barker shoes too. Open Sunday to Wednesday till 6, Thursdays till late, half day Friday.
The big red building on Golders Green Road.
Picture a boy. He's in his teens. In a classroom. Distracted. What do you see? A lack of concentration? Or do you see what we see? A young man wondering how he can change the world. There are troops on peacekeeping missions that need that right now. Your army needs you. Find where you belong. Sedge Army Jobs.
At Asda, we know when it comes to passing the chockies round, everyone has their favourite. So this Christmas, whether it's the big green triangle or the sparkly purple one, we have tubs of Quality Street at the very sweet price of just £3.50. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores subject to availability. Tub 650 grams.
We've got something to tell you about the Honda Jazz. We know it looks small, but inside, it's really big. That's why we've created the small but big Jazz event, where you can get 0% APR representative and 5 years complimentary servicing on all grades until the 31st of January. The Honda Jazz, the small car with the big offer. Visit your local dealer to find out more. Honda dealers are credit brokers, not lenders. Finance provided by Honda Finance Europe, authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Terms and conditions apply.
Will you find a fiver, tenner, 20 or even a crisp £50 note in your copy of The Sun on Sunday? That's right, cash. Yes, real banknotes inside the paper. We're giving away a ho-ho-ho load of Christmas cash this weekend only in The Sun on Sunday. It pays to read The Sun. T's and C's apply.
On DAB, digital radio, online and on mobile.
We are Talk Radio. Across the UK, online and on DAB.
Talk Radio, on the hour news headlines.
I'm James Lower. Good afternoon. The Prime Minister's to make it a law that £34 billion a year extra must be spent on the NHS by 2023. Boris Johnson also says he now has an overwhelming mandate to take Britain out of the EU by the end of January. Michael Gove also says the government will absolutely not grant permission for a second Scottish independence referendum.
We were told that that referendum would settle the question for a generation. In this general election, we have just seen what happens when politicians try to overturn a referendum result. We are not going to have an independence referendum in Scotland.
Whilst Jeremy Corbyn said sorry to Labour supporters in an open letter after their worst election performance since 1935, Shadow Justice Secretary Richard Bergen says their approach to Brexit was to blame.
Our attempt to bring the country together, people who voted Leave and Remain, didn't work. We're leaving the European Union. What we now need to look at is trying to, when we leave, protect jobs, protect the economy.
A man has been taken to hospital after being shot by police in Hull. Officers believe he had a firearm and no one else was injured. An 18-year-old is due in court charged with murder tomorrow after the body of a boy was discovered in Cheshire. Alex Rodder, who was 15, was found in Ashley on Friday. And former Emmerdale star Kelvin Fletcher says he's in complete disbelief following his Strictly Come Dancing victory. The actor lifted the Glitterball trophy despite coming second on the leaderboard. So weather, a mixture of sunshine and showers today, most frequent in western areas. Some eastern parts staying dry with sunny spells. Windy though, especially across the south.
Talk Radio Sports Update.
Champions Manchester City are 17 points adrift of Liverpool going into this afternoon's clash with Arsenal at the Emirates. Ahead of the game, though, it's been widely reported that Chinese broadcaster CCTV won't televise the match and have removed it from their schedule because of comments made by midfielder Mesut Ozil. The Gunners star posted on social media about the treatment of Muslims in the country. Today's other Premier League games sees an opportunity for three sides to close the gap on the top four after Chelsea's defeat at Stamford Bridge at the hands of Bournemouth. That's with Tottenham facing Wolves, whilst Manchester United welcome relegation-struggling Everton. And Dejan Lovren has been ruled out of Liverpool's Club World Cup campaign with a muscle injury. He hasn't travelled to Qatar. However, midfielder Gini Wijnaldum is included in the 20-man squad, despite having to come off against Watford yesterday.
Talk Radio. Across the UK, online and on DAB Digital Radio.
Talk Politics with Alexis Conran on Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the show with me, Alexis Conran, here on Talk Radio with the Times. Be well informed. You can watch us live streamed on YouTube, and you can take part in the conversation here. 0344 499 1000 is the number you need, or you could tweet us at Talk Radio. I'm glad to say I've spoken to him on the phone countless times. It's got quite heated on the phone every now and then. But now I've met him in the flesh. I'm delighted to say Nigel Evans, Conservative MP for Ribble Valley, joins me in the studio. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Paul Flynn once, the great former Labour MP, once referred to me as a tabloid made flesh. I know, it was wonderful description.
What a description! Well, it's always very. I have to say, it's always very disarming when you meet people in the flesh, because you sort of, you know, all the disagreement goes aside for the time being. You know, still got half an hour. But listen, I'll ask you the same question I've been asking everybody on the show. What do you think won it for the Conservatives? And it was, let's be honest, it was a huge surprise and it was a huge win. I think a lot of people knew that the Conservatives were more than likely to get a majority, but I would even put it past you to say that you knew you were going to get such a stonking majority.
My guess, my prediction, is on a bit of paper in an envelope with the chief whip.
Yeah.
Because some of the officers of the 1922 on our last meeting, we had a little guess, and I put Conservative majority of 100.
Okay, so you were overconfident then.
Yeah. I got to tell you though, Alexis, towards the day as electoral calculus, you know, and any MP who tells you they don't care about the polls, don't believe them. That is their first big lie. Because I was on electoral calculus about 20 times a minute, and you could see it narrowing.
Right.
And a lot of Tories I spoke to thought maybe a majority of 20. Well, when you're playing around with 20, it could go from 20 to a hung parliament very quickly. Just a sneeze of a story, and then all of a sudden you're in a negative position. I mean, I bumped into Mark Tammy, Labour MP for Alun and Deeside. I said, I couldn't even remember whether we'd won that seat or not. And I said, so what happened to you, Mark? He went, 3 recounts. He said they found a bundle of Labour votes with 1 Tory on top. And he said that reversed it, but at one stage he was only 11 ahead. Right. Can you believe that? And I bumped into David Hanson, the former MP for Delyn. He lost his seat, and he just said, well, that's the way it goes. So
what do you think?
It's amazing.
What do you think swung it?
It's the clarity of the message. You're absolutely right. It was brutal. It was get Brexit done. And in these seats that we've won in the North East and the North West, we've gained 11 seats in the North West, including Lee.
We just spoke to Ronnie Campbell of Blythe Valley.
Oh, yeah, his old seat went. Yeah. I mean, him and Dennis Skinner used to sit next to one another in the House of Commons. And, of course, Dennis went. Yeah. But Ronnie didn't stand again. And it was the clarity. So in these seats in Lancashire, where my seat is, every constituency voted Leave. And yet all those MPs, apart from Rosie Cooper in West Lancashire, and she retained her seat, voted against every variation of Brexit. And the seat next to me in Hyndburn, Accrington, hasn't been Tory since Ken Hargreaves. We lost that seat in 1992, hasn't been Tory since. But Graham Jones, the former Labour MP there, again said his seat voted 66% Leave. And yet Graham never once voted for any variation of that deal. And so, it's quite obvious what was happening. And on the day, on election day, I was in Hyndburn and delivering leaflets. And I could tell, going around that seat, the party didn't want me to go to Hyndburn. They really didn't think we were going to take it. But when I was wandering around, I could see, normally there's a huge plethora of Labour posters in windows and gardens. I hardly saw any.
Really?
Hardly any. And I thought something's happening here. So on the last day, we put out a leaflet that basically reminded everybody that 66% of Hyndburn voted Leave and that Graham Jones didn't support any Brexit deal. And that Sarah Brickcliffe, I think she's 24.
She's the youngest of the new intake. At 24.
I know. She thought she could do it. She told me, I had her around for dinner at the beginning of the campaign. She thought she could do it. Yeah. But I remember helping out the candidate in 2017 in that seat. And when our manifesto got published, that's when the tide turned against us. And this time, of course, it didn't, because the manifesto was absolutely spot on.
Well, I think the motto for the manifesto, what I heard, was "If in doubt, leave it out." I mean, come on.
Great idea.
Well, but let's be honest, the manifesto is very thin on what, I can't quite tell you what this new Johnson administration is going to deliver. I'm sure we'll find out in the Queen's speech, but it was, we spoke yesterday to a Labour MP who said actually the big Labour manifesto was a hindrance because there was too much in it. Yeah. And people started doubting of the ability of a potential Labour government to deliver all this stuff that they were promising. So in a sense, you're right. I think the simplicity of the manifesto, but let's be honest, both the IFS condemned both manifestos as difficult to deliver. Yep. But here's a question before we go. I want to talk about the youth vote as well that you mentioned. But what do you think Conservatives, and how are they going to retain those Blythe Valley seats, those big, that famous red Labour wall that they now have broken into, so to speak? Because what Ronnie Campbell was telling us earlier, he said Blythe Valley is going to see millions of pounds going into it. But how is this going to happen, Nigel? Because you've already said, Sajid Javid said, VAT, income tax, national insurance, they're not going up. Triple lock on pensions, so even with inflation, you're going to have to find money to pay for those. You've got Brexit coming up. Let's not get into a Brexit fight, you and I. We've had enough.
We're leaving next month.
We're having enough. We certainly are. But how are you going to pump money in the north to justify those votes that were lent to you, as the Prime Minister said.
Yeah.
How are you going to keep those seats up in the north?
It's a brilliant question, because I guess most of your listeners moved on Thursday night once they saw the exit poll and thought, well, that's it for another 5 years. MPs don't think that way, and politicians generally don't think that way. And I think what you'll find is that we are now in the next election mode, which is in 5 years' time, because at least I think we've got stability for 5 years now with a majority of 80. I can't see anything going wrong there.
It's Boris Johnson we're talking about, though. They anything can happen.
But no, my prediction is Boris will be there with Dylan the dog.
Okay.
But these new MPs who now represent these former Labour heartlands will be thinking, what will it take for me to be re-elected in 5 years' time? And so it was mentioned during the campaign, but it wasn't central to it, that we wanted to, for instance, on education, equalise spending so that places in the northwest, northeast, £4,000 per kid now in primary schools, £5,000 per secondary school. So that we're going to see a big increase there. And it was also mentioned that when we do these trade deals and Boris wants to attract inward investment, he wants them to think outside of London, yeah, clearly, but also to set up firms and factories and inward investment in the northeast and the northwest and in Wales and in other parts of the United Kingdom.
This is all sounding very reminiscent to a certain George Osborne and his Northern Powerhouse, which failed to materialise, though. Let's not forget you have. I mean, and again, it's a huge feat that Boris Johnson has achieved, and I never thought I'd say these words out of my mouth. But to win such a stonking majority when you've been in government for 9 years and imposed austerity to the nation is quite an achievement. Well, I mean, he almost fought this election as if he was the opposition.
Yeah, that Liam Byrne letter when he was...
oh, come on, Nigel, leave
still
it.
Still there. And I tell you what, it was...
But it happens with every government, they leave a letter like that.
Nobody has ever left a letter that says that there's no money left. That's
but it was
number
9
one.
Years ago,
he got 15...
Nigel.
Corbyn got 15 of his former MPs to sign a letter like 2 days before the election saying, whatever you do not vote for Corbyn. I mean, it was a spectacular, amazing. Up in Barrow and Furness, my former researcher, Simon Fell, who is now the new Member of Parliament for there, he had the former MP, John Woodcock, campaigning for him. I mean, these were spectacular things. And so I know Simon really well. As I say, he's my former researcher. He will now be thinking, what will it take for me to win that seat in 5 years' time? And this new swathe will be holding Boris's feet to the fire, no doubt about it.
He may be thinking that, but with Boris having such a big majority, you know as well as I do that a big majority gives any Prime Minister the licence to be able to ignore certain members of his Parliament. And you know very well as I've read Nick Dubois' book.
Great man, Nick. Great man.
I've read his book, which is a very good book, that, you're a brand new MP, you get to Parliament, you're thinking, right, what can I do with my constituencies? You get to the big boys who are playing, and the girls who are playing, who are actually
correct.
Yes, who are actually got their hands on the levers, and you say, I need money for my hospital, I need money for my schools, and they turn around to you and say, who are you, and what can you do for us?
Do you know what?
It's not as simple as what you're making it sound to me.
Excuse me. The first thing I suspect that they'll do, if they've not already done it, there'll be a 2019 WhatsApp group where they'll all talk to one another. Right. I mean, seriously, because there's a Conservative MPs WhatsApp group, and I've spent the last 2 days watching telephone numbers being added to it, and then the odd couple like poor Alan Main and Zach Goldsmith leaving. And that's actually, it pulls at the heartstrings, that. But a load of MPs have just been added to the WhatsApp group. They'll start their own. And I'm absolutely certain that they'll all be talking about what Boris needs to do, not only to secure the seats we've just won, but to win seats like Allen and Deeside next time round that we only lost now by 200.
But where's the money going to come from? That's the important question. It's all very well, George Osborne said the powerhouse of the North, all that, but actually the money is just not there.
Well, that's why I think the Conservatives didn't overpromise, because we thought that there was always a strong chance that we would get elected. I mean, a lot of my mates thought we'd get elected by about 20 seats, a majority of 20. But majority of 20 is a good working majority. And then you've got to deliver on the promises that you've made. And that's why we did not go into the stratosphere on the promises that we were making. I mean, I did the Victoria Derbyshire show where they had 40 voters who were undecided. 3 of them, right at the beginning of the programme, said, we actually think that the Labour Party have overpromised, free everything, free this, free that. towards the last week or so of the campaign, not mentioned in their manifesto at all. By the way, we're going to pay for the WASPy 58 billion. And all of a sudden, I think people genuinely thought, well, where the hell's the money coming from that? And it was never properly explained.
Let me ask you about this. We look at the voters by age, and one of the big criticisms of the Conservatives has always been you're almost like a dying party. You basically, the youth vote is massively towards Labour. Here it says 57% of 18 to 24s went for Labour, 55% of 25s to 34s, 45. You don't see a swing towards Conservatives until above the age of 45. Now, I've got to admit that I was rather surprised by this article today in the Sunday Times. It's titled "The Boris Babies," which I think the newly elected under 30s are rejecting as a title. But you have a lot of very unconservative-like MPs. So these are very young people. They're not Eton or privately educated. No. They're locals to their constituents. Elliot Corbyn, 27, narrowly won his seat in Carshalton. He beat Dr. Philip Lee, I think, there. Quite a lot of them, 8, as I said, are under 30. 24 are openly gay or bisexual. Is this the sort of completely new look of the Conservative Party?
Newish, because it's been going that way for quite some time. I mean, as you know, I'm openly gay, and we've got now more openly gay MPs than any other political party. It's that is a fact. And funnily enough, actually, the British Parliament has more openly gay MPs than any other parliament in the world. I mean, it's a staggering statistic. So, yeah, we've got a lot of youngsters. I mean, I've just come from Portcullis House in the House of Commons, where they've got all these welcoming desks for all the new MPs turning up. And you're right, a swathe of them never thought in a million years that they would be representing that seat where they were born in, where, James Grundy in Lee is the new MP for Lee. It's never, ever had a Conservative MP before, ever. I think James is probably young 30s, maybe not even reached that. Sarah Brickcliffe in Hyndburn, 24. I mean, Sarah, for goodness sake. So they'll be wandering in, stupefied, still probably on cloud nine, a lot of these people. And it is amazing that the candidates seem to be a bit ahead of the curve as far as the voters are concerned. When I knew it was going to be a big turnout, by the way, I got a bit worried, because a big turnout means that the youngsters, who a lot of them don't bother voting for whatever reason, I mean, seriously, they just don't bother. Then I started to think, wow, strong turnout. But then what I thought
turnout was down in the end.
Yeah, it was.
By about 1%.
It was, but every polling station I went to in the Ribble Valley said, oh, it's a strong turnout. And I thought in the end that the strong turnout was possibly a repeat of the Brexit vote, that people came out in huge numbers during that referendum to vote to leave. And I thought maybe the same voters are coming out again.
Actually, again, evidence has come out that the constituencies where the turnout rose were actually constituencies of people turning out to vote against Labour. So this massive turnout, the youth quake that we're going to vote pro-Labour, didn't actually materialise. But do you think that getting these under 30s MPs and that sort of the young MPs, the young local MPs, is that the way that you are going to entice more youth votes to come to the Conservative
I've got no
Party?
doubt about that at all. I'm an old fuddy-duddy. You know, this is, I'm 62 now. I will definitely feel very old in this Parliament. Yeah, it's I love you, Lay.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. Nigel's going to stay with me for the next 15 minutes or so. Feel free to pick up the phone. 0344 499 1000 is the number you need to chat to myself. Nigel, you can send us a tweet here at Talk Radio.
We are Talk Radio. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio with The Times and The Sunday Times. Know your times.
I'm Ben. I used to be homeless. I'd sleep in the train station, stuff newspapers in my clothes to keep warm. Sometimes I thought I wouldn't wake up. No one should have to live like this. The Crisis Christmas Centre was a safe place. We got hot meals, health checks and support. In the new year, they helped me find work and a home. This Christmas, you can reserve a place for someone who's homeless for just £28.87. Go to crisis.org.uk today and help someone like me take their first steps out of homelessness. Thank
Your
you.
online life is slick and on point. Just how you like it. Except your email. That's a right mess. Chaos. The new Yahoo Mail app will sort all of that out. Gmail account, AOL, Outlook, stick them all on there. Looking for something? Boom! There it is. Need that ticket right now? Whoa! It's already there. And you can unsubscribe from the junk in one tap. We've rethought your email and your life just got tidier. Download the Yahoo Mail app now.
Emma, this is for you. Thanks, Mum. It's got a fabulous set of cameras, ultra-wide lens and everything.
Jan.
And this is for you, Jack.
Thanks, Mum.
Tracks your heartbeat. Isn't that clever?
Jan, honestly.
And love, these are for you.
Oh, thanks.
They're supposed to have amazing base quality.
Mum!
Enjoy cashback on our Samsung Galaxy range, including £100 when you purchase the Galaxy S10e. Shop from our Galaxy range at your local 3 store or 3.co.uk. Purchased by the 25th of December 2019. Claim from Samsung within 30 days of purchase. T's and C's apply.
At Asda, we know when it comes to passing the chockies round, everyone has their favourite. So this Christmas, whether it's the big green triangle or the sparkly purple one, we have tubs of Quality Street at the very sweet price of just £3.50. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores subject to availability. Tub 650 grams.
The Sunday Times presents Life Lessons, a weekend of big talks from big thinkers, bringing together some of the world's greatest minds to present a never-before-seen take on well-being. It's smart, informed and practical. Join our stellar thinkers, Alain de Botton, Bill Bryson, Darren Brown, Ruby Wax and many more for 2 days of debate, conversation and insight. Life Lessons, 15th to the 16th of February 2020 at the Barbican Centre, London. Book your tickets now at lifelessonsfestival.com.
Talk Radio, traffic and travel.
Starting off in Surrey, the M23 southbound from the M25 on towards Junction 9 for Gatwick Airport. There is a breakdown there, so one lane is closed. In Surrey, the M25 clockwise at Junction 13 for Staines. There's an accident there as well. All lanes have reopened now, but still some very long queues in the area. And in Kent, the M25 anti-clockwise between Junction 3 for the Swanley interchange and 2 for the Darrant interchange. There's a breakdown there, so one lane is closed. I'm Ellen Collin.
Pick up your Christmas presents and your pudding all at the same time. Order your presents online at John Lewis & Partners by 8 p.m. and collect them from 2 p.m. the next day from Waitrose & Partners. Click and collect is free on orders over £30 and can be collected right up until Christmas Eve. Exclusions apply. See in store or online for details.
Across the UK, online and on DAB Digital Radio. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio.
The show with me, Alexis Conran, here on Talk Radio. With me, I have Nigel Evans, Conservative MP for Ribble Valley. Nigel, I want to ask you a little bit about how this election was fought and how people such as yourself feel about it. I know that feelings and means to an end and all that, I understand that, and let me put it right out there, I think the Conservative campaign did its job. Yep. It had the job to do, which is win, and that's what it did. However, I worry a little bit in the means with which the Conservative campaign achieved that. Several incidents I can point to. Changing the CCHQ Twitter handle to Fact Check UK. What I would refer to as sort of misleading, sort of dirty tricks, if I can go that far. If you are being accused of over 80% of your advertising on Facebook being false or misleading, that's something to think about. Now, of course, it did the job. You're in power. But are we firmly now in the world of no-shame politics? There's just no boundaries that you won't cross to get to power.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I know the Lib Dems themselves were condemned for, producing newspapers that looked as if it was a newspaper, and leaflets with bar charts. Yeah, there some leaflets
that were slightly...
dubious, incredibly dubious, yeah. So I know that there was a lot of that, and they were called out at the time. But I think we were aided and abetted as well by possibly the most unpopular Labour leader since Michael Foot.
Okay,
and,
but
that was helping. That was helping.
But set that aside. I'm talking about, for example,
that Twitter handle thing was stupid.
The Twitter handle,
stupid.
Yeah, but don't you see that it means that a party that has behaved, dishonourably, if you like, has won an election. What does that say
No,
about
I
our
wouldn't say we've
politics?
acted dishonourably. I think the Twitter thing was stupid.
What about the Michael Gove stunt with the Channel 4 climate
Yeah,
debate?
but the Channel
leaders?
4 should have allowed him to have...
He's not a leader, Nigel.
It doesn't matter.
Well, hang on a minute. You set up a debate. You set up a debate. Says a leaders' debate.
Yeah.
As far as I know, Michael Gove lost the leadership election to Boris Johnson. Therefore, he doesn't qualify for a leaders' debate.
But Channel 4 don't get to dictate who is going to appear on their political shows.
Well, they do.
And
if they call a leaders' debate, they say we invite leaders.
I know
if you don't want to
But
go, you don't go.
there were other debates where other people went instead of the Prime Minister or the leaders
But they
of
weren't
parties.
called the leaders' debates.
Yeah, I know, but you don't have to do them.
Come on,
And as you know,
admit it to me. It was a bad stunt.
No,
It was a bad stunt.
No, I tell you what was bad, and I think it backfired on Channel 4 because people like me thought, you prats. You prats putting a lump of ice there that was melting. It was a stupid thing to do. And Channel 4 should now reflect on that decision because it certainly didn't work with the public, did it? The public turned out in their droves to vote Conservative, despite what Channel 4 did.
That is, you're right about that, despite that. But Channel 4 laid out the rules. They said we're going to have a leaders' debate. If the leader doesn't want to come, he doesn't come.
Empty chair then. But I saw that photograph of Michael Gove and Stanley Johnson. My goodness me, they had the Prime Minister's dad there as well, who is
and a camera crew following them. Why did they do that, Nigel?
Iconic figure.
Why did they do that? Why did they have a camera crew
following them all the time?
Oh,
Can't get out of bed without a camera crew being there.
Come on, Nigel.
But Stanley, as you know, is an iconic figure in the world of climate change.
Yeah.
I mean, that was gold for Channel 4 if they'd allowed them on.
What about Boris Johnson dodging Andrew Neil? All party leaders did that.
Yeah, no. There again, he said that he doesn't like that format, so he didn't do it, and I don't blame him because it's an old format. Well, you saw when he did Andrew Marr and Guido Fawkes, that incredible Right of Centre website, did an analysis of that interview where Andrew Marr spoke for 43% of the time. I mean, there again, that's a tired format.
But don't you think... Well, hang on a minute. Don't you think that when you say it's a tired format, let me remind you that the viewing figures for all those debates were some of the highest viewing figures they've been. So it's not a tired format. The people at home are watching it. So I think that argument is by the by. Second of all, you were very happy as the Conservative Party to use Jeremy Corbyn's interview with Andrew Neil.
Absolute car crash.
You used that. So if you are using it against somebody, it's only the honourable, and this is why I come back to no shame politics. It's the honourable thing to do to put yourself in the same position and fight for your ideas.
Yeah,
why did Boris Johnson not do that?
Boris did. I think it was over 120 interviews, including phone-ins, which I understand Jeremy Corbyn didn't do phone-ins.
That's true.
So that is phenomenal. So he did open himself up to a lot of questioning by a lot of people during that campaign. So I don't blame him for picking and choosing what is going to put him in the best light. This is a job application to be Prime Minister of this country.
Sure, and if you can't take an interviewer like Andrew Neil, then perhaps you shouldn't be a Prime Minister.
No, he just chose, I think, rather smartly, that he wanted to give more ordinary people the opportunity to ask questions about where the Conservative Party are going to go now over the next 5 years, rather than somebody like Andrew Neil. Listen, I'm a huge fan of Andrew Neil's. He's a precision surgeon, that man.
So what did you make of his little monologue about the Prime Minister?
There again, I think that backfired too. All of a sudden, the BBC became the news story, and the BBC shouldn't have been in that particular position. He didn't need to do that little thing. But having said that,
so Boris Johnson's going to be a bit like Trump then. He's going to be giving interviews to people he likes.
No, as I said, 120 odd interviews that he did. So there's not, and he did a lot of phone-ins. So ordinary people got the opportunity to speak to Boris directly, and I think you'll see a lot more of that. But of course, he's going to use social media. He's going to do that. He's going to speak directly to the people, as you saw when he first became Prime Minister. He had that little broadcast that he did with Larry the cat walking over his papers. I mean, he's going to do a lot more of presenting himself out there.
And what about things like, for example, repeating things like the 40 new hospitals, every fact-checking association?
He's going to have to deliver those now.
Well, he's going to have to deliver. Well, the thing is, but I wonder whether he's going to switch to say, well, actually, it was only really 6. because that's the truth of it. Or
No.
the 50,000 more nurses, all those things. Why?
Well, the 50,000 nurses, as you know, and that came out during the period of time, was 31,000 of them are going to be brand new and the others are going to be retained.
So why not
who would
say
otherwise
31 new nurses and you're home and dry?
Yeah, but it's in essence, there will be, at the end of that this Parliament, 50,000 extra nurses.
There won't be extra,
Well, there will,
because you've already got the 19,000. Come on, Nigel, work with me here.
The reason why we didn't hit the target on doctors was because too many of the doctors were leaving.
Sure.
So therefore, we couldn't in the end deliver on that particular promise. So now we're looking at how we retain the doctors.
Sure, but if I take my daughter, who's 13, she's got 3 apples, and I give her 2 more, and I say, you've got 5 more apples, she's going to say, no, I don't. You've just given me 2 extra. A child can see that 50,000 more nurses it's just a
well,
lie.
If your daughter ate one of those apples, she'd only have 4, so she's got to stop eating those apples.
Dear God, I don't even see why 30,000 more nurses, new nurses, would have sufficed, and you wouldn't have got yourself into this trouble. Let me, because we've only got 5 minutes left. So
I'll carry on. I'm enjoying it.
I know you are. Let me ask you about what happens next. There are a lot of people out there. The country is still divided. As I mentioned earlier in the call with Naomi Smith, if you tot up the votes that voted for pro-Brexit parties, and if you tot up the votes that voted for parties that were either saying a second referendum or revoke or whatever, you still have a split. You have 16 million people voted for parties that wanted to somehow stop Brexit. Only 14.6 million voted for Brexit. We are where we are. I don't want to rerun the referendum.
No, well, we won't be doing that.
No, it's been done fairly.
That decided that.
It's been done fairly. That is our system. That is the system we've all agreed to abide by. We are leaving on the 31st of January. But do you accept that the country has not just magically united behind Boris Johnson all of a sudden because of this stonking victory? And there are people who are genuinely concerned by some of the rhetoric that's come out of the Prime Minister. People such as my wife, who has listened to the Prime Minister saying too many EU citizens have been treating this country as their own for too many years. That kind of language worries people. It worries people who are EU citizens, who are in this country, who have children, who have homes, and they don't know what kind of Prime Minister Boris Johnson is going to be with an 80 majority.
That's why I thought he was very clever in the way that he referred to those who voted Tory in Labour heartlands, who've never voted Tory in their lives before. He said, your pen or pencil quivered over the ballot paper, and you've lent us your vote, and I won't let you down. So I think that is exactly the right tone. Not to say, right, we've taken you all for granted. No, absolutely not. And I'm a former co-chairman of the Brexpats group in the House of Commons, looking after the interests of EU citizens living in the United Kingdom. They are an amazing group of people who have decided to come and live and work in the UK. We want them to feel that this is their home, and quite rightly so. So anybody who said that they're treating it like their home, well, this is their home. And we'll make absolutely certain that the laws are passed that establish that is what is going to happen.
But you realise that the issue that a lot of people who did not vote for this Conservative government, let's remind ourselves, the Conservative government got a high share of the vote, 43.6%. That means that the majority of the country did not vote for Conservatives. But this is the system we have. Again, I'm not trying to say, somehow this is not a legitimate... But there are people out there who may be worried. And as you said, the Prime Minister made that speech. But let us remind ourselves that this is a Prime Minister who says a lot of things. And he says a lot of things that are either found to be factually untrue or that he rose back on. Let me remind you, we'll be out of the EU, do or die. I would rather die in a ditch than send a letter. Both things he's rode back on. So what guarantees can you give to those listeners out there who are worried about Boris Johnson's trustworthiness that he will stick to his word?
I think the public out there, I always said that the voters are really savvy, and they are. In their seats, they listened to what Boris was saying, and they knew that he wanted to leave the European Union, but it was the broken parliament that prevented him from doing it, and the Speaker who allowed the rulebook to be torn up in order for the Labour Party to act like a government.
Sure, I don't want to pick through that. What I'm asking is Boris Johnson's trustworthiness. This is a man that has broken promises. This is a man who's been sacked for lying, for making up quotes of his godfather from a national newspaper. You're talking about a man who's... maybe yonks ago, but you can only go by what you can read and hear coming out of this Prime Minister's mouth. How can people gain how can they gain his trust, basically?
Yeah, and he's got to do it. I mean, I do apologise that he did not die in a ditch. I mean, but you and I know...
Maybe he shouldn't have said it.
No, but it's a saying. I'd rather die in a ditch.
Oh, but Nigel, it's always...
It's an old saying.
Oh, yeah, but, the Bum Boys reference that he made, that was just a saying. It's a bit of a joke. But, where, the burkers, the bank robbers and letterboxes, everything's, it's just a saying. But that's not how it lands to people that it affects.
No, so what he's got now is 5 years to prove himself. And the first thing that's going to happen, as you know, next week, we've got all these wonderful newbies arriving at Portcullis House today, looking a bit stunned and mesmerised as where they are, who they are, and all that.
I would be too if I was 24 walking in there with you lot.
First thing they've got is Monday night, 1922, drinks. That is the backbench committee of the Conservative Party. So we had Christmas drinks planned. We decided not to cancel it. And it will now be to welcome all the new MPs there. And Boris, I'm absolutely certain, will be there and give a rousing speech. We will then have the election on Tuesday of the Speaker, and I predict Lindsay will get it uncontested, Lindsay Hoyle. And then all the MPs will start swearing in. Thursday, we've got this truncated Queen's speech. He probably turn up and say, I refer you to a Queen's speech I gave a moment ago. And then on Friday, it looks to me as if then there's going to be the introduction of the bill that will then pave the way for us leaving the European Union next month. And when we've left on the 31st of January, that will be the delivery, the first delivery, down payment of all the promises that we've made in our manifesto.
And of course, what has changed, we are in a new chapter. As you said, this is going to happen unequivocally January the 31st. But now you own Brexit. The Conservative Party, from now on, cannot blame a Remain Parliament.
That's right.
They cannot blame the opposition. They cannot blame anyone else bar themselves for what is to come. So you've promised a lot.
That's right.
And you've promised. Let's remember that we've fallen into the rhetoric of Brexit's not going to be that bad, but we're now going to go back to the Brexit that people voted for, which was the sunny uplands, the fact that we voted for something that's going to make us better off than we are now, and you are going to deliver that.
Well, do you know when the exit poll came out, the pound shot up 2 cents immediately. It would have been quite the reverse had it been a hung parliament or Jeremy Corbyn had won. I'm absolutely certain.
Well, we don't.
So what you are going to see, you are right though, and Boris was very clever. He got all his candidates to sign up to the deal. I was sick and tired of looking at YouTube videos of Heidi Allen and Sarah Wollaston and Anna Soubry all saying, oh, no, that's it now. We have to accept the verdict of the referendum. And then during the general election of 2017, they said exactly the same thing, only to renege on that during the 2 years since. Now, that won't happen because we've all signed up.
Anna Soubry was very clear to her constituents back in 2017 where she stood, and they voted her in.
No, but she said she accepted the referendum result, because don't forget, we fought the 2017 election on delivering Brexit, and that's what they all said, and there's plenty of footage of it, but they all reneged then for 2 years. Well, the public had had enough of it, and so Boris rather smartly got everybody to sign, not quite in blood, to say that they will back his deal. It will pass through very quickly. And then we can bring the country back together again.
Well, let's see. Let's see what happens. Let's see what kind of Prime Minister he's going to be. Nigel, thank you so much for taking the time to pop into the studio.
It's lovely to be here.
I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
I look forward to our future phone conversations.
Normally from the Ribble Valley.
Normally from the Ribble Valley.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Nigel Evans, Conservative MP of Ribble Valley. We'll be straight back after this.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
This is Talk Radio. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio. With the Times and the Sunday Times. Know your times.
Winter's arrived. There's a cold front a-coming. The heating's turned on and the meter is turning. You need to stay warm for as cheap as you can. It pays to shop round for your best power plan. Switchcraft.co.uk can find you a great energy plan this winter and keep you on great deals automatically, saving you an average of £268 a year to spend on other things. Like Christmas. Best of all, it's absolutely free. Switchcraft.co.uk, the one-stop, no-hassle route to great energy deals this winter. See if you could start saving now at switchcraft.co.uk and outsmart the energy companies.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year? I want a new phone. One with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local Vodafone store or vodafone.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12/19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
At Asda, we know when it comes to passing the chockies round, everyone has their favourite. So this Christmas, whether it's the big green triangle or the sparkly purple one, we have tubs of Quality Street at the very sweet price of just £3.50. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores subject to availability. Tub 650 grams.
Today, it's Man United v Everton and Arsenal v Man City in a huge afternoon of football. And with Now TV, you can watch both games live for a one-off payment of just £9.99. Hold on, they're checking with VAR.
That's confirmed. It's £9.99.
Good call. Game on. So, to only pay for the games that matter to you, grab a Now TV Sky Sports Day Pass. Search Now TV Sports. 18 plus, content streamed via internet. Full terms apply.
Why is Daddy dancing like that, Mummy?
Oh, he's just really happy his Uber Eats is here, sweetie. He ordered a curry. David, stop it.
Uber Eats. Download the app now.
Talk Radio, traffic and travel.
Starting off in Surrey, the M23 southbound from the M25 on towards Junction 9 for Gatwick Airport. There is a breakdown there, so one lane is closed. In Surrey, the M25 clockwise at Junction 13 for Staines. There's an accident there as well. All lanes have reopened now, but still some very long queues in the area. And in Kent, the M25 anti-clockwise between Junction 3 for the Swanley interchange and 2 for the Darrant interchange. There's a breakdown there, so one lane is closed. I'm Ellen Collin.
Pick up your Christmas presents and your pudding all at the same time. Order your presents online at John Lewis and Partners by 8 p.m. and collect them from 2 p.m. the next day from Waitrose and Partners. Click and collect is free on orders over £30 and can be collected right up until Christmas Eve. Exclusions apply. See in store or online for details.
Greetings, Earthlings. We come in peace. We wish to communicate with your leader.
I'm Howard Hughes. Join me tonight from 10 for a trip into the outer limits.
Untwist the lid on Talk Radio's specimen jar of the psychic, the supernatural, and the simply unexplainable. The Unexplained with Howard Hughes. Tonight from 10, Earth Time on Talk Radio.
Across the UK, online and on DAB Digital Radio. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the show with me, Alexis Conran, here on the Talk Radio with the Times. Be well informed. Now, let's get to some of your calls and your messages. First up is Tony in Enfield. Tony, welcome to the show. What would you like to say?
Hi, Alexis. If you recall, well, we spoke about a month ago when we talked about Boris's prorogation.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So how do you feel, Tony? What do you feel about the election result?
Look, I'm not going to be too smug. I mean, yes, I'm very thrilled with the result. Just a little under 5 years ago, people said to me Britain would never vote for a majority Conservative government ever again, and it just, well, proves them wrong that there was still hope for that. Mm-hmm. But, of course, the reason why this happened, and I know people keep saying Brexit, this is one single issue. Well, Brexit is a multiple of issues itself. Mm-hmm. Labour needs to understand that even though they keep on going on, like Owen Jones and the other figures of Labour, that 2017 was successful for them. The only reason it was is because the Labour leadership, implied that they would respect Brexit. They put in their manifesto that, yes, it was from Theresa May's kind of Brexit, but we will implement it. So 2 out of 3 Labour constituencies who voted to leave obviously trusted their party. Yeah. But since then, it became clear that their party wasn't going to respect Brexit. And, I just find it hypocritical, Alexis, and even if you are a Remainer yourself, but first of all, they said Theresa May's Brexit gave too much to the EU, which is why they rejected it 3 times in Parliament, including the Labour leadership. But then when Boris makes his proposal, they say that the deal is even worse because it's too radical. It breaks us. There's a risk that we are going to be breaking away from the EU on a
I'm not quite sure that they said that Theresa May's deal was too much, but suffice it to say that it wasn't, you know, Labour was always on the side of some sort of customs union, the protection of workers' rights, etc., those famous 7 tests, which neither Boris Johnson's deal nor Theresa May's deal lived up to. But I take your point. So do you think that then that Labour's demise in this election was purely down to Brexit?
Also, I mean, down to the leadership as well, because there are some people, my family, most of them are Labour, actually. My auntie and uncle refused to vote this time because they also don't like the leadership, and they said that to the candidate on the door. But going back to Brexit, I mean, staying in the customs union actually is more of a giveaway than Theresa May's deal anyway as well. Staying in the customs union means the EU still controls our trading quotas from around the world.
Yes.
And the UK can't have an independent trade policy. So
Correct.
that is more of a giveaway than to say that, oh, well, we have to reject Theresa May because it was far too weak, and saying Boris's deal is too radical. Staying in the EU is one of the things of staying in the EU is being in the customs union. So that is a major blow giveaway. So they can't say that Theresa May's deal was too weak and then advocate that in 3 months and put it to another referendum.
So in your view, do you think that if Labour had taken the view that the referendum was to be respected, we definitely want to take the United Kingdom out of the EU, no second referendum, no ifs or buts, we'll negotiate a trade deal that protects workers' rights and environment as much as we can, but there's no question of a second referendum. Do you think that having adopted that Brexit stance, but with the same leader and the same manifesto, do you think they could have triumphed over Boris Johnson?
Definitely would have got a hung parliament, that's for sure. I think those Labour Leave areas would never have. I think those Labour Leave areas would have not swung to the Conservatives, absolutely, because those are traditional Labour areas which are untouchable for the Conservatives for over 100 years. It definitely would have had an impact. I mean, no one can get a crystal ball out and say 100%, but definitely. I think what I would have happened was a hung parliament with a Labour propped up by the SNP. Yeah.
So what do you think, Tony? I take it you voted for Brexit. Am I right? And
I was very reluctant at the time. I stood in the box for about a minute or so, but yes.
Okay, and you voted Conservative this time round.
I always do vote Conservative.
Okay, so you know your party won the election. What do you think you've won? What do you think you've finally achieved? What's going to happen that makes you feel right? It's done this time. We're moving on.
Well, first of all, is to get the FTA going. We have to have discussions on the trade arrangement, and that's what the withdrawal agreement will now do. I mean, yes, people keep accusing Brexiteers of being this far-right movement, that we're all a bunch of Farages, etc. Many people actually are not. Now, they do respect some of the points Farage makes about Europe, but we're not all this right-wing agenda. Yeah. We're just saying that we believe in a sovereign country, just like India believes in its sovereignty, and that's not far right-wing, is it? Just like, a majority of the world does. Even, Mexico is in a free trading bloc with Canada and America, but they wouldn't advocate being dictated to by the United States on their domestic policy. If NAFTA, for example, became a federal union, they would never accept that, and nor would the Canadians either. But yes, I think I would like to move on from this. We adopt a free trade agreement. We do go by obligations. We're not, going to suddenly just reverse whatever we may owe to the EU. But I do think it should be verifiable, this 39 billion. They need to point out exactly with.
Well, that's been agreed now. That has been agreed, and it's been agreed by Boris. And actually, if it's 39 billion and you get your Brexit, do you really care? Is it your 39 billion, Tony?
No, I do care about the government. Of course I do, because if you don't care about your government and what it's spending on, well, then simply you're giving you're paying your taxes in vain. And I think people should care about their taxes, and not just with Brexit, but anything. They should care about their taxes.
Okay,
look, yes, I mean, 39 billion is our obligation, because let's face it, our membership bill actually would have continued going up, because especially when Tony Blair reduced our rebate, which Mrs Thatcher negotiated, and he gave half a bit away for nothing, not even to benefit Britain. Our bill got revised up in 2013 because of that. which is when David Cameron had his showdown. I don't want to waffle on, but the bill was going to go up anyway for staying in. So that 39 billion will cover any outstanding obligations that we are obliged to pay as leaving members.
Okay, look, Tony, I'm going to leave it there because I want to get one more caller on the line, but good to speak to you again. Thank you. That's Tony in Enfield. Carl's called from Warwickshire. Carl, welcome to the show. What would you like to say?
Yeah, what I'd like to say is I'm 61 years of age, and for the first time ever, I voted Conservative.
Why?
Reason being, because I want Brexit, for one. I want to break away from Europe. I'm sick and tired of my taxpayers' money and everybody else's being used to fund a good lifestyle for Europeans, from what I've seen of it anyway. And secondly, I'd like to add that basically I'm sick and tired of hearing the Tories and Lib Dems blaming the Conservative Party for the state of the NHS. For me, the NHS has changed drastically over the last few years when you've got trusts involved that are managed by people who are taking away themselves. And that's money to me. That
Hang on a minute. Are you saying that people managing the NHS should not be paid?
Well, no. What I'm saying is we don't need the trusts. We should revert back to the old-style system where we had matrons in charge and that. You know, to me, we're going stupid. You know, why do we need a trust to manage a hospital? Put the people that are on the front line that know what they're doing in charge.
Okay. Carl, thank you for your call. I only leave it short because I've run all out of time. Just a small point. You said that you're sick of your money going into the lavish lifestyles of what you can see of the EU. I'm sorry, Carl, but that's just total nonsense. A lot of money from the EU also comes in to this country and always has done. If you just take a look, go to myeu.uk, put your postcode in, and you can see all the money that has been spent by the EU in your local area. Yes, we pay into it, but we get money back from it. But again, that conversation is no longer... it's pointless because 31st of January, we are leaving. It is a new chapter. And what we need to do is sort of focus on what the future will hold. That FTA, how much can we benefit from it? What good it will do to us and our country. That's all from me today. And that's all from me for a couple of weeks because I'm going off. Well, look at the sight of you. I'm going off for Christmas for 2 weekends. That voice that you hear is Jamie East. Now, when I said look at the state of you...
Well, you say that every week, to be fair.
He's dressed like Father Christmas.
Absolutely.
And why have you got Stuart, our tech op, dressed up as Rudolph?
We've got Rudolph. We've got producer Sam dressed as an elf in lederhosen, and Hannah, our assistant producer, dressed up as a Christmas tree.
What is going on?
It's our Christmas show. I'm off next week as well, so this is our Christmas show. It's our end of year quiz. It's the big. We've been building up to this quiz for 12 long, arduous months. And it's happening today.
So basically, that's what's coming up.
That's what's coming up.
Okay, people, tune in for the big Christmas quiz. That's all from me. I'll see you in a couple of weeks when I'm back.
We are
Talk Radio.
The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio with The Times and The Sunday Times. Know your times.
Your online life is slick and on point. Just how you like it. Except your email. That's a right mess. Chaos. The new Yahoo Mail app will sort all of that out.